Over the last year or so, I've uploaded 7 videos that extensively cover everything to know about each skill in Stardew Valley. What you're watching now is a compilation of those 7 videos with a couple of edits made. Any redundant information will be edited out, corrections on false information will be edited in instead of in the comments, and intros and outros will be stitched together with minimal downtime. These are some of the videos that I'm still most proud of, so I hope you enjoy. Farming. Fishing, foraging, mining, combat. These are the 5 skills that live in harmony in the valley. Only the farmer, master of all 5 skills, can bring economic prosperity to Pelican Town. Welcome to the beginning of a series of videos. I've done guides before that focus on specific seasons, but looking back on them, they can be really scattered and overwhelming for the average player. Here, we're going to focus on one skill at a time and do a deep dive into everything it has to offer. First, we'll be talking about the overall mechanics of farming. After that, we're going to go over all of the crops. And that's all that this video is going to be because apparently I am not very good at being succinct. When it comes to the next video, we'll be talking about all of the animals, and then all of the extra machines and level up rewards that farming has to offer. Also, this is a pretty chunky video, so please use the chapters to get to whichever section you think you need. Let me know if anything in here helped you. Let's get into it. So, the way that I see it, no talking about specific crops or anything is going to be beneficial until we go over the basic mechanics. Alright, so, to plant a crop, first you need to hoe the spot, put down any fertilizer, put in the seeds, and then water it every day until it's ready to harvest. Okay, let's speed it up a bit. You've got 2 kinds of crops, single harvest and regrowable. Regrowable crops will stay up after the first harvest and will provide more harvests in a shortened amount of time until the crop goes out of season or you just take it out manually. Regrowable crops have a few complexities to them, such as any fertilizers will only affect the first harvest. For instance, speed grow only decreases the initial growth time, and quality fertilizer will only increase the quality of the first crop. There are also trellis crops, and the only difference with them is that you can't walk through them, so just don't plant them in a way where you won't be able to reach any of them. Generally, I try to plant them in rows of 2s, and that works out pretty well. And to go over different fertilizers really quickly, the fertilizers all increase the quality of your crop. Deluxe fertilizer makes iridium crops possible and normal quality impossible, and if you're at least level 9 with deluxe fertilizer, you'll always have at least gold quality. This is often the best to use on single harvest crops. With speed grow, it increases the growth speed of a crop by 10%, deluxe speed grow by 25%, and hyper speed grow by 33%. Note that in every case, it'll round the amount of days to grow downwards. As an example, let's look at cauliflower. Normally it takes 12 days to grow. If I were to put speed grow on it, that should reduce the days by 1.2 days. Which normally it'd round up to 11 because that's the closest number. Instead, it's always going to round down, so now the amount of days to grow is actually 10. In general, speed grow is a somewhat situational choice, being the most useful when you'll get an extra harvest before the end of the season out of it. Lastly, we have retaining soil. This is the simplest of them all. Basic retaining soil has a 33% chance to stay watered overnight, quality retaining soil has a 66% chance, and deluxe retaining soil always stays watered. That ought to do it. So, I'm about to blow your mind here. This is a farming game. As such, crops are a big part of the game. They'll be your main source of income from the beginning all the way to the end game. It's important that you know all about these, so I made a chart. Yeah, me and my charts. From left to right, this shows you the buy price, how long it takes to grow and regrow if applicable, the sell price, any multipliers here indicate a chance of getting multiple crops from the same harvest. Next, you have the profit per day, and finally, which crops act as loved gifts for the villagers, since these gifts can be easily repeated by just growing more crops. The crops are organized in order of availability. For instance, parsnips are the first seeds you obtain, but at the bottom, strawberries can only be gotten on Spring 13th at the Egg Festival, rhubarb is available once the desert is unlocked, and garlic is unlocked at the start of year 2. So, the part that you're probably paying attention to right now is the profit per day, but I want to go over every single crop and give you a reason that you should grow it. Too many times we get stuck in a cycle of just planting the one crop that gives the most money. but it's time for a little perspective. Starting with parsnips. With the shortest growing time of any crop in the game, it serves as one of the best ways to make a quick buck. I personally buy parsnips on day 1 of my playthrough to start making money as soon as possible. It's also required for the spring crops bundle. You also need 5 gold star for the quality crops bundle. You'll notice that this bundle only requires 3 of the 4 options to be used. However, seeing how parsnips is the cheapest of these 4 crops, I definitely recommend using it. Potatoes have a 1/4 chance of providing a double harvest, which in turn makes these have the best gold per day of all of the spring crops sold by Pierre on year 1. So this is your springtime moneymaker until the 13th rolls around. It's also required for the spring crops bundle. Moving to blue jazz, flower crops have the ability to boost the selling price of honey that is made within 5 tiles of the flower. Blue jazz is the best one for spring, increasing the price of honey from 100 gold to 200 gold. Cauliflower has the longest growing time of the season of 12 days. It can serve as a low maintenance crop with the trade-off of having to wait longer to obtain the money. This is also required for the spring crop bundle, and make sure to plant it on day 1 if you want to get the speed grow reward in time for the strawberries being sold on the 13th. Kale is harvested with a scythe, which is many times faster than picking individually. In addition to that, it gives the best farming experience per day when harvested, being 17 experience or 2.83 experience a day. And your farming levels are very important this early on. Tulips are the cheapest sources of energy in the early game. At normal quality, they provide 45 energy with eaten, all while only costing 20 gold each. They're also the cheapest option to use in tailoring a skirt, which I had to stretch for the tulips, sorry. Green beans are your only option for a regrowable crop from day 1. It'll take 10 days to grow initially, but only 3 days every harvest after that. You never need to replant it, just water and harvest. The gold per day value you see is only if you plant it on day 1, and this is the last crop required for the spring crop bundle. So rice might seem a little odd at first glance. You lose money by planting it. However, the product is unmilled rice. To turn it into actual rice, you'll need a mill on your farm. After milling, it sells for 100 gold instead of 30, increasing your profit to 18.3 gold a day. Note that this number is a little inflated compared to other crops since milled rice can't have any quality other than normal, and you do have to pay the price of building a mill, which is 2,500 gold. Now, what is irrigation? Well, any crop that can be irrigated can be planted within 3 tiles of water and not need to be watered, in addition to having a slightly faster growing cycle. This applies only to rice and 1 other crop in the entire game. This essentially makes rice a set it and forget it type of crop. So strawberries have the true highest profit per day spring crop, but can only be bought on day 13. If planted on the 13th, you'll have 2 harvests, and the gold per day will be 11.67, which you'll notice is a mile above the competition. However, if you use speed grow that you obtain as a reward from the spring crops bundle, you'll get another harvest before the end of spring. This will bump your gold per day to 17.3. Most people simply spend the first 12 days making as much money as they can just to spend on these, and for a good reason. Rhubarb are our first crop that's sold in the desert. You probably won't get a chance to plant these until spring of year 2, but they carry both the advantage of only needing to be harvested after 13 days, and being the highest gold per day spring crop, not including strawberries, which are still limited to the Egg Festival even on year 2. Garlic is our first year 2 crop. This shares the short 4-day growth cycle of the parsnip, with a better profit per day. It's also the only way of obtaining the oil of garlic, which is a cooking recipe you receive at level 6 combat, giving a buff that prevents infested floors, swarms, and in the mines, makes absolutely no enemies spawn. So how was all that? I'm happy to give a little love to the lesser used crops. If you want to use this graph for yourself, I'll have a link in the description to an image that you can save. So on to summer. Important to note, in general, the monetary experience gained from crops increases from spring to summer. So a lot of these are just going to be way better than anything you can get in spring. Right off the bat, blueberries are the best gold per day summer crop that's available from day 1. You'll notice that it always produces 3 berries every time it's harvested. The individual crop's cheapness along with its abundance makes it a great candidate to be used in preserves jars, which always add a base 50 gold to the sell price. It's also required for the summer crops bundle. Corn is special in that it's both a summer crop and a fall crop. The 7.5 gold a day you see is if you plant it on summer day 1 and leave it until all the way at the end of fall. If you leave it only until the end of summer, that actually goes down to 1.92 gold a day. It's not only needed for the fall crops bundle, but 5 gold star corn is an option in the quality crops bundle. I also want to go over a special quality of multi-season crops. If they're left in over the transition of the season, any fertilizer it was planted on will stay, where normally the fertilizer goes away. Hops is yet another regrowable crop. This one produces every single day after its initial growth, and it has a fairly unique use in kegs. Hops in a keg will produce pale ale, which only takes around a fourth of the time it would take to make wine, and more importantly, sells for 300 gold, which is a 12 times improvement over the base price of hops. This is the second best moneymaker from kegs other than starfruit wine. On top of all that, it gives the best experience per day at 6 experience a harvest or 3.64 a day due to its massive 17 harvests per season. Hot peppers are a very middle ground regrowable crop. They provide an alright gold per day, have the shortest initial grow time, giving a consistent source of gold through the entire season, and they're required for the summer crops bundle. You can treat melons as just a better version of the cauliflower. Extremely long growth time, so not a lot of replanting and picking, and is the second best gold per day in summer of the regular crops. They're required for the summer crops bundle, and 5 gold stars are an option for the quality crops bundle. These are your best option for putting in kegs due to them having the largest single sum of gold from a single crop. Poppies give you the best honey in summer, increasing the price to a hefty 380 gold. It also holds the best experience per day of any single harvest summer crop at 2.85 experience a day. Radishes. This one might be the first one that I'm pulling a blank for. It grows relatively quickly for a slightly below average gold per day. If you have exactly 6 days left and need something to plant, this'll be your guy. Very situational though. Summer spangles are basically a much cheaper alternative to the poppy, costing half of the price, but only increasing the honey price to 280 gold. Unlike the poppy though, which is a universally hated item, it's liked by everyone except for Clint, George, and Sebastian, and is actually loved by Carolyn. Sunflowers are yet another crop that can last into fall. Obviously, it's not that great for selling, but it has a ton of utilities that make up for that. First of all, when it's harvested, it has a chance to drop anywhere from 1 to 3 sunflower seeds, allowing you to replant it for free, and then some. Of course, in this case, you'd be waiting 16 days to turn any amount of profit, so it's still not useful just for money. It can, however, be turned into oil with an oil maker, which increases the price to 100 gold. While it's still not going to turn a profit, it's definitely cheaper than the 200 gold oil is normally sold for in the shop. Finally, as a summer and fall crop, it can preserve your fertilizer over the season transition, and since the only other flower in fall takes a whopping 12 days to grow, it can be pre-grown in summer to increase your honey prices for the first few weeks of fall while you wait for the fairy rose to grow. Tomatoes are a mediocre crop when it comes to money, but it's required for the summer crops bundle, and it's a very common ingredient in cooking recipes, required for 8 different recipes, including squid ink ravioli, which has a unique buff that makes you completely immune to any debuffs. Wheat is by far the cheapest crop in the entire game, as well as having a quick 4-day growth cycle makes it alright for a quick buck. Just like rice, it can be placed into a mill to make wheat flour, increasing the sell price to 50 gold for a 8 gold per day profit. This is also just a cheaper way to get wheat flour, which is normally sold for 100 gold each, as an ingredient that's required for 20 different cooking recipes. It's also a fall crop, and is the cheapest and easiest way to keep your fertilizer from summer to fall. Starfruit is unlocked once you reach the desert. I don't need to tell you how good it is, I'm sure its reputation precedes me. This is one of the best crops in the entire game for making money. Each fruit sells for 750 gold, which is increased to a massive 2,250 gold when made into wine. Unfortunately, you probably won't be able to make use of it in year 1 due to it being locked in the desert. Now, red cabbage is a crop that was just put into the game to make you hate it. It's unlocked on summer of year 1, however, it's required for the dye bundle in the bulletin board. So if you want to get it before year 2, the only way to find it is being sold by the Wandering Trader, or to get it as a drop from serpents, mummies, or purple slimes in the Skull Caverns. It doesn't have much of a use outside of that due to being outclassed by Starfruit in almost every single way.
So cactus fruit, similar to grapes, can be foraged in the desert, and it can also be bought as seeds from the oasis. It takes 12 days to grow, but what's really interesting about them is they cannot be grown outside on your farm at all. They either need to be in the greenhouse or in your house in a flower pot. What are they good for? Well, they are needed for the desert obelisk building, but mostly I'd say they're best for loved items for Linus, Pam, and Sam, being the only crop that's loved by 3 people.
Well, that was a lot. Very appropriately, summer has a lot more crops than the other seasons. Speaking of, we only have one left: fall. Right off the bat, you'll notice that the crops aren't as good as summer's. And the idea here is that you're making up for that with a higher farming level, increased automation with more sprinklers, and maybe even some upgraded tools to make the whole growing process a bit faster and less energy intensive. Let's get into it. Amaranth is a middle-of-the-road gold per day that can be harvested with a scythe. There's a quest that you'll always get on the 3rd day of fall where Marnie requests an amaranth for 500 gold. So really, if you just grow one, you can pretend it's a 71 gold per day crop. Bok choy is the classic 4-day grower. Again, it's good for a quick buck, and this one also gives the best experience per day in fall: 14 experience at harvest or 3.5 experience a day. Fairy roses are the only fall exclusive flower, and it gives the largest possible boost to honey, increasing the price to 680 gold. It's also required in a crafting recipe for an item that instantly makes any machine complete its task. Monetarily, this item is useless, but it does have a few niche uses, and it's nice to just have one around just in case. Pumpkins are the best crop to use if you intend on using kegs, as it sells for the highest amount in just one crop. Same as the cauliflower and melon, it's low effort with a long 13-day growth time. It's also required for the fall foraging bundle, and 5 gold stars is an option for the quality crops bundle. But the other 3 crops are all cheaper than it, so it's up to you if you'd like to use pumpkins. I consider it more of a backup just in case I didn't get any of the other options. I already went over sunflowers in the summer section. They're practically useless to plant in fall unless you need some cheap oil. They're completely outclassed by the fairy rose in terms of honey. Wheat is pretty much the exact same it was in summer. Yams are pretty much just needed for the fall foraging bundle. They also have a 3% chance to be dropped from Duggies in the mines, so you might not even need to plant one. Any corn you have should have been planted in summer, because they'll yield almost no profit if they're planted now, although they are still needed for the fall crops bundle and the quality crops bundle. Cranberries are your moneymaker of the season. Like blueberries, they're a great option to put in preserves jars since you get multiple every single harvest. Eggplant is the last crop required for the fall foraging bundle. They have a great use as an ingredient in survival burgers. The other 2 ingredients are cave carrots and bread, which can easily be gotten at any time. Their survival burger increases your foraging by 3 levels. This can make the blackberry bushes yield an extra berry if you pass a level divisible by 4, including level 12. I find blackberries to be one of the best energy sources in the entire game. Planting grapes now is a good backup if you forgot to put a grape in the summer foraging bundle. It can also be used to make summer seeds if you have spice berries and sweet peas lying around, which can then be crafted into tea leaf bushes, which sell for a fat 500 gold each. In terms of actual crop uses, it's pretty much outclassed by cranberries. Beets are the fall crop that's locked behind the desert, which you might actually have unlocked by year 1 fall. Beets' main use is to be put into a mill, making 3 sugar each. This will only increase your profit if you put in a beet that's either silver or normal quality. Gold quality would sell for the same amount, and if you put in an iridium beet, you actually lose money. Sugar, of course, is a very common cooking ingredient, just like wheat flour. Artichokes are the crop that's unlocked in year 2. They have much shorter time to grow than pumpkins, with a similar amount of gold per day. Most importantly, they can be tailored into my preferred shirt, the button-up. Oh boy, that is every single crop in the game. Almost. There's a few special cases that I need to go over really quick. So we'll go in order from the most to least common. Let's start with coffee. These are a spring and summer crop, but they can only be gotten as a random drop from dust sprites or by being sold randomly by the wandering trader. Their most important use is being put in kegs to make coffee. Coffee is the easiest food to obtain that gives a speed buff, and almost everyone worth their salt keeps a stack of these in their inventory at all times. Next, the sweet gemberry. The seed for these can only be sold by the traveling cart, and it costs 1,000 gold. It has a huge growth time of 24 days and then sells for 3,000 gold. However, it's needed for a star drop by being given to this statue in the Secret Woods. Feel free to buy it every time it comes up in the shop. It's a pretty long investment, but it gives a ton of money back. Note that the sweet gemberry itself cannot be put into a keg, however it can be put into a seed maker. Not that you'd have much of a reason to do so, because you'd have to wait an entire year to plant it again. For the last of the base game crops, we have ancient fruit. This is technically the best crop in the game, just with a lot of specific drawbacks. For one, the seeds aren't sold anywhere. You either need to get them as a random drop from enemies, or put an ancient fruit that you've already grown into the seed maker. There's also a very low chance of just randomly getting them from any other crop that you put into the seed maker. Then, even though they are regrowable, they take 28 days to grow, so the only way you're going to make use of the regrow is if you put them in an area where the season doesn't matter, like the greenhouse. From there, you're going to have to slowly fill up the greenhouse with more ancient fruit whenever you get them, and this takes a very long time for it to start really filling up. The reason these outclass starfruit is due to them being regrowable and not having to pay for seeds. So if you're looking for money over a very long period of time, this is ideal. Otherwise, you're better off just using starfruit. Note that this next section will include spoilers for version 1.5 exclusive crops. First, taro roots. This is the only other crop, other than rice, that can be irrigated. As I said before, this means no watering and it grows in 7 days instead of 10. Each taro root, which is the product of taro tubers, will sell for 100 gold, coming out to a 14.25 gold per day, which is pretty hefty, especially considering it's just a leave it and forget it kind of crop like rice is. It's also used as a currency itself at the island trader, for items like farm warp totems and the luau skirt. Last but not least, pineapples. I like to see these as less profitable but easier to set up ancient fruit. The seeds aren't viable, but they can be traded for magma caps at the island trader, and drop from hotheads and tiger slimes. They take 2 weeks to grow and will produce again every week after that. At first glance it seems pretty great, but remember that fertilizer does not apply to them. That, and due to starfruit having a larger cost per fruit, make them more efficient when it comes to wines. Pineapples are definitely in the top 5 though.
So, before we get to the animals, first you're going to need somewhere for them to live. At Robin's you can buy the coop or barn for a small sum of money and materials. It'll take 3 nights for the building to be built, at which point you'll now be able to buy a big coop or a big barn. When you buy these, you'll be asked to upgrade the existing coop or barn, and we're not done yet because after that you get access to the deluxe barn and coop, which is the final upgrade. There's quite a few things that you get out of upgrading your coop or barn. First of all, you get more room for animals and more kinds of animals for each upgrade. Upon getting the big version of each building, you get the ability to incubate eggs in coops and the ability to have pregnant animals in barns. And with the deluxe upgrade of each, you get an auto feeder so you don't have to put out your hay every single day. While it's a lot of money, I'd probably recommend at least one of each for your average playthrough, and you'll make your money back if you play your cards right. There's also one building that you might want to buy first, the silo. This will allow you to store the grass you cut as hay, which will work as food for all of your animals. You don't need a silo though, since the animals can also eat grass straight from the ground. With that, let's start with the cheapest animal of all, chickens. Chickens are the only animal that can be kept in regular coops, and they cost 800 gold. They come in 2 colors at first, with 2 more colors unlocked later, one after seeing Shane's 8 heart event, and one after achieving perfection. The regular 2 colors can both be obtained randomly when you buy a chicken from Marnie. Chickens produce, imagine this, eggs. There's 2 different kinds of eggs, but actually there's 4. You can either get a small egg or a large egg, both of which can either be brown or white. The color depends on the color of the chicken that laid it. The color is only important if you want to hatch a chicken from it of a certain color, or in the animal bundle in the community center where there's a slot for both a large brown egg and a large white egg. So then what determines the size? Well, every animal has 2 stats, friendship and mood. Both of these stats are taken into account when determining the size and quality of the egg. This remains true for most animals in their products. Friendship will always start at 0 and can be increased every day by petting the animal, milking and shearing them if it's possible, and letting the animal eat outside. You can see the friendship level of an animal by looking at their hearts. Pets have a max of 5 hearts, which is a total of 1,000 friendship points. So for chickens, if you pet them and let them eat outside every day, it'll take 5 days for them to get to 1 heart, at which point they can make large eggs, although it's not guaranteed. It'll be guaranteed at around 4.5 hearts, but only if their mood is high. Mood, unlike friendship, is a value that can vary wildly day to day. There's a ton of ways that mood can vary, but there's really just 2 things you need to remember. If the animal eats outside, mood is automatically maxed out. And if it's inside in winter with a heater, mood will constantly increase up to the max. As long as the animal is fed and isn't left out after dark, mood will be nearly perfect. There's also formulas and stuff that take into account exactly how friendship and mood determine quality and size of eggs and whatnot, if you want to see that. Now let's talk about the eggs. Base eggs sell for 50 gold and it gets the same quality boosts that crops do, being 1.25 times for silver, 1.5 times for gold, and 2 times price for iridium. The base price of large eggs is 95 gold with a max of 190 at iridium. There's quite a few things you can do with eggs. Sell them, incubate them to hatch another chicken. If you do that, it'll take about 6 days to hatch. You can save some eggs for cooking, or you can turn it into mayo with the mayonnaise machine, which will sell for 190 gold from a small egg, or 285 gold from a large egg, because then it'll come out as gold quality. For the sake of comparing the different animals, I'm going to assume that they're at their peak without taking into account professions, since the artisan or shepherd professions can make things really complicated. So an ideal chicken will make you 285 gold a day, since it'll always be producing a large egg and you'll always be making it into mayonnaise. Moving on to the first big coop animals, first we have ducks. Ducks will cost you 1,200 gold. It'll take 6 days for the duck to hatch, and then 5 days to mature. Once they're an adult, they can possibly drop 2 different products. First, a duck egg. Instead of being laid every day, it's laid every other day, given the duck is fed and happy every day. It'll sell for 95 gold at base, it's an option in the animal bundle, and it can be used for cooking like any other egg. When made into mayo, however, the duck mayo will sell for 285 gold. At a higher friendship and mood, the duck will have a chance to drop a duck feather instead of an egg. The duck feather is much more limited in its uses, pretty much just being good as a gift to Elliot or Leo. The only way it'll sell for more than the duck mayo is if you don't have the artisan profession and get an iridium duck feather. Under full friendship circumstances, a duck will earn you about 188 gold a day. Next, void chickens. So even though this is a kind of chicken, it's different enough to get its own section. First of all, you can't have it until you have a big coop because you can only obtain the egg, not the animal itself. You can either buy the egg from Krobus for 5,000 gold, or get it through the random witch event, where she'll leave a void egg in your coop overnight. Void chickens will take about 6 days to hatch and then 3 days to grow. At that point, they'll lay a void egg every day that sells for 65 gold at base. Funnily enough, despite being a universally disliked item for everyone except Krobus and Sebastian, it can still be used for cooking just fine. And it can also be made into void mayo to be sold for 275 gold each. While this is less than gold mayo from a large normal egg, you don't need to get friendship up to produce a void egg. As such, you can just ignore your void chickens and collect the eggs with no penalty. As long as you're feeding them, of course. You also will eventually need a void mayo for the witch quest, so you might as well have at least one void chicken. They'll earn you 275 gold per day. Last but certainly not least for the big coop, dinosaurs. Similar to void chickens, these can only be found in egg form, either from digging up artifact spots in the mountains, in fishing chests, or dropped from pepper rexes in the skull cavern. Also, as a note, the dinosaur egg does need to be donated to the museum. However, I definitely recommend incubating your first egg, as you'll get more dinosaur eggs from that in the future. So when incubated, it'll take a whopping 11 days to hatch, but it'll be matured already right out of the egg. It'll then only lay 1 dinosaur egg per week, sold at a base 350 gold. Unlike other eggs thus far, it cannot be used in cooking, but as it's considered an artifact, it's liked by the dwarf and penny. It can still be made into mayo, sold for 800 gold each. So gold per day comes out to 114 gold, with the trade-off of only needing to be egged once every 7 days. Finally, we move on to the deluxe coop, which adds just one new animal, rabbits. They cost 8,000 gold to buy and produce wool every 4 days. Their deluxe produce is rabbit's feet. This is the rarest of all deluxe drops, at best having a 40% chance to spawn at full friendship. For reference, duck feathers have a 42% chance to spawn at full friendship. Wool can be made into cloth or sold at a base price of 340 gold. Cloth will sell for 470 gold, which is actually less than the sale price of an iridium quality cloth, especially if you have the rancher profession. Lastly, wool is an option in the animal bundle, and cloth is an option in the artisan bundle. Rabbit's foot sells for 565 gold at base, but its main use is as a universally loved item for everyone except Penny. It's also required in the Enchanter's bundle, and if you're holding it whenever you enter the cutscene for dating all of a certain gender in the valley, you'll get away with it. Due to only producing once every 4 days, the rabbit isn't that great for profit, mostly just for gifts. Now we'll move over to the barn animals, starting with cows. Cows will cost you 1,500 gold each, and even though you can get either a white or brown cow, they both produce the same thing: milk. After being bought, they'll take 5 days to mature. Speaking of maturing, this is a good time to mention that barn animals, because they don't incubate as eggs, have a random chance of just giving birth any given night, even if you only have one cow. There's a lot of complexities with how it's calculated, but basically, if nothing else happens on that night, and you have a barn with animals that isn't full, there's a chance, and that chance increases the more animals you have. And you can disable this when you're checking your animals if you don't want that to happen. In terms of producing, they work pretty much identically to chickens. Every day they're fed, they'll produce milk with a base sell price of 125 gold. With high enough friendship, they have a higher and higher chance to produce a big milk, sold at base 190 gold. Milk can be used for cooking, sold, or turned into cheese. And large milk is an option in the animal bundle. Small milk will turn into regular cheese, sold for 230 gold, and big milk will be gold cheese, selling for 345 gold. It can also work as a really good food item for energy, and it's used in a few cooking recipes. Under ideal circumstances, cows will make you about 345 gold a day. Next in big barns, goats. Goats cost 4,000 gold, take 5 days to mature, and produce goat milk every other day. A small goat milk sells for 225 gold, and a large sells for 345 gold. As always, this can be used instead of milk in cooking recipes, and can be made into goat cheese, which sells for 400 gold or 600 gold when gold. Quality. Goat cheese is also an option in the artisan bundle, but oddly enough, it can't be used instead of cheese for cooked recipes. Can any cheese enthusiast explain? The goat will earn you about 300 gold a day, and its only real purpose is for bundles, in my eyes. Now, sheep are fun. They sell for 8,000 gold, mature after 4 days, and require shears to harvest wool every 3rd day. The wool is identical to the wool from the rabbit. However, if you have at least 4.5 hearts with it, or 900 friendship points, it's shearable every other day. On top of that, if you have the shepherd profession on top of high friendship, it'll produce wool every single day. With the shepherd profession, you'll be earning about 500 gold per day, but to be fair to the other animals, without any professions taken into account, you'll earn 250 gold a day. Finally, for deluxe barns, pigs. These cost a whole 16,000 gold to buy, and then they'll take 10 whole days to mature. After that, if they can go outside, they'll dig up a truffle, which sells for 625 gold. Every day. Just make sure that they're walking on actual ground and not paths that you put down, because they can't dig up truffles from paths. On top of that, if you have the gatherer or botanist profession, which makes all foraged items iridium and gives chance for a double harvest, it actually also affects truffles, since they're mushrooms, bringing the sell price to 1,250 gold per truffle, and possibly doubling that if you get a double harvest. It doesn't stop there though. With high friendship, the pig will have a chance to dig up even more truffles, at a 66% chance at full friendship, and it can continue to dig up more and more until it fails that roll. On average, a full friendship pig will produce 3 truffles a day. You can either sell these truffles outright or turn them into truffle oil in an oil maker. and truffles are required for the chef's bundle. Truffle oil is an option for the artisan bundle, and it sells for 1,065 gold. Of course, there are downsides. If it's raining or winter, the pig can't go outside, so you'll get absolutely nothing. And obviously, it does take a lot of money to get going. But once you do have it set up and running, the pig will produce an average of 3,195 gold on a sunny day, and that's not even counting any professions. Going forward, the next two animals will be spoilers for endgame, so if you want to, you can skip it. So golden chickens are only available after reaching perfection. So ultimately they won't be too useful in the playthrough, but we'll go over it anyway. There's several ways to get a golden egg. Buying from Marnie for 100,000 gold, buying it from the Key Walnut Room for 100 gems, randomly fishing it up from a fishing chest, or now there's a chance for the witch event to turn into the golden witch event, leaving a gold egg in your coop instead of a void egg. A golden chicken will take 6 days to incubate and then mature in 3 days. As opposed to regular chickens, they only lay one kind of egg, golden eggs. These sell for 500 gold, can be used as eggs in cooked recipes, and when put in a mayo machine, make 3 gold star mayo. Now I haven't talked about selling animals up to this point simply because it's pretty much a waste of money, but I want to point out that golden chickens sell for the same amount as normal chickens do, 252 gold as a newborn chick, and 1,040 gold at full friendship, which is hilariously low. So every day a golden chicken will net you about 855 gold a day, which is really good, but again, you can only get them at the very end of the game. Lastly, we come to the ostrich. The only way to get ostrich eggs are first from a dig spot in journal scrap number 10, or in rare chests in the volcano dungeon. That's it. Do not get rid of your first ostrich egg. To hatch it, you'll actually need an ostrich incubator, which you'll find the recipe for by completing the fossil collection on Volcano Island. These can only be placed in a deluxe barn, and it'll take about 9 days to hatch the egg, and 7 more days for the ostrich to mature. After that though, they're pretty simple compared to most animals. They lay an ostrich egg once a week and that's it. Ostrich eggs sell for 600 gold and can of course be used instead of an egg in cooking recipes. Although I do kind of wish it made double the amount of cooked items because, you know, it's big. If they're used in a mayo machine, it makes 10 mayonnaise, which altogether will sell for 1,900 gold, which comes out to 271 gold a day. Honestly, I'm struggling to find a proper use for these, other than if you need a lot of mayo for something. And that is every single animal in the game. So that leaves us with one thing left to do. Go over every farming level up reward, including the professions. At level 1, you get the basic fertilizer recipe, which slightly increases the quality of crops, and the scarecrow recipe. These will prevent crows from destroying your crops and has a sort of not circle, not square area of effect shown here. The way crows work is basically if you have 16 or more crops, there's a chance that a crow will eat it. There's an extra chance of a crop being eaten every 16 crops with a max of 4 crows at 64 crops planted, and they won't spawn on Ginger Island at all. At level 2, you get the mayonnaise machine. We've gone over these quite a bit. Stone fences, which is a fence. It won't break down as much as the wooden fences. And you get sprinklers. These will automatically water the 4 crops directly next to them. Most people tend to skip on these since you don't have a ton of crops planted this early anyway, but you can use them if you feel like it. At level 3, you get bee houses. We went over these in the farming video. Pair them with fairy roses in fall to get the most out of them. You get speed grow, which speeds up crop growth by 10% and always rounds the amount of days downwards. It can be situationally useful to get an extra harvest in a month. And the Farmer's Lunch Cooked recipe, which will raise your farming level by 3. I will mention that boosting your level doesn't give you the new crafting recipes or professions or anything, it just increases the quality of crops you harvest. At level 4 you get preserves jars, which I also went over in the last video, increases the sale price of any crop put into them by double plus 50 gold. They're also needed to make caviar from the sturgeon roe for the lost bundle. And you get basic retaining soil, which has a 33% chance to keep the soil watered overnight. Good for crops and potted plants where you can't use sprinklers, but not for much else. And iron fences, sturdier than stone fences. Level 5 is our first chance to get a profession. Basically, you choose one of two paths and you'll get 2 unique professions on level 10, depending on what you choose here. First, we have Rancher, which makes animal products sell for 20% more gold, and Tiller, crops are worth 10% more. I don't think it's unpopular to say that this is the most obvious choice of professions in the entire game. Not because of what these 2 professions give you, but what their professions at level 10 give you. Tiller is the choice, mostly because you're going to be dealing with crops more than animals unless you're doing a challenge run or something. But there's also a profession on the Tiller path that makes Rancher pretty much entirely pointless. At level 6 you get the Cheese Press, turns milk into cheese. Hardwood Fences, which is stronger than an iron fence. Not sure if that's consistent with real life, but whatever. And Quality Sprinklers, they water the square of 8 crops around them. This is the first sprinkler that most people try to make en masse, and it's easily one of the best unlocks up to this point. At level 7, you get the Loom, which turns wool into cloth, and Quality Retaining Soil, which has a 66% chance of keeping soil watered, again, mostly useful for plants and flower pots. At level 8, you get the Oil Maker, which makes truffles into truffle oil, and corn, sunflower seeds, and sunflowers into regular oil. You get Kegs, which increase the price of fruit by 3 times, and vegetables by 2.3 times. This is another machine you're going to be making a ton of, especially if you're going for some of the more expensive endgame goals. And Deluxe Speed Grow, which speeds up crop growth by 25%. Still situational. At level 9 you get Seed Makers, which will randomly make 1 to 3 seeds of whatever crop you put into it, with a small chance of randomly giving ancient seeds. These are essential for certain crops that you can't obtain the seeds of easily, like ancient fruit. And finally, Iridium Sprinklers, the best sprinkler in the game. It covers 24 crops in a large square around it, nearly essential for late game farming. And the last unlock, Quality Fertilizer, raises the quality of crops, just more than basic fertilizer. Always good to use. So for the level 10 professions, we actually have 4 to talk about, 2 for each path that we took at level 5, starting with the Rancher professions. You have Coop Masters, which petting coop animals will give twice as much friendship, and incubation times for eggs is cut in half. And then Shepherd. Petting barn animals gives twice as much friendship, and sheep will produce wool 1 day sooner. So Coop Master is a great example of a profession that you'll only benefit from a few times in the entire game, just whenever you put an egg in an incubator. On the other hand, there's something to be said about Shepherd, making sheep the second best animal for producing money, and making pigs friendly faster to make use of the insane amount of money they earn sooner. Personally though, neither of these compare to the Tiller professions. First you have Artisan, which makes all artisan goods sell for 40% more. This includes cheeses, oils, anything made in a keg or preserves jars, honey, and a few other things. And then Agriculturalist. All crops grow 10% faster, rounding down of course. So now you probably see where I'm coming from. The best items for making money in the entire game are all artisan items. And most animal products can be made into artisan products, making Rancher obsolete. The only situation that I'd really use Agriculturalist is if you want to do a huge harvest of crops, make them grow faster, and then before putting them in kegs and selling them, swap to the artisan profession in the sewer, and immediately make back that 10,000 gold price that you paid to swap skills. Personally though, that's more effort than I'm willing to give. I usually just stick with artisan, as do most people. Now at the end of the animal section here, I do want to talk about 2 machines that kind of aren't covered anywhere else in the game, and that's the Auto Grabber and the Auto Petter. The Auto Grabber becomes first available to you once you hit level 10 farming, at which point it gets sold by Marnie for 25,000 gold. When placed in a coop or a barn, it'll automatically collect the eggs, milk, or shear any animals you have in there. Now, notable is the fact that if it auto milks or shears your animal, you will not get the 5 friendship that you would have gotten if you milked them yourself. Which leads us into the other item, the Auto Petter. The Auto Petter is only obtained in 2 very obscure ways. First, if you complete the Joja Community Development Form instead of doing the Community Center, these will be sold from Jojamart at 50,000 gold. If you complete the Community Center instead, the only way to get the Auto Petter is from a Skull Cavern treasure room with a 1 in 26 chance to appear. So very few people actually have one.
All it does is prevent the friendship of an animal from dropping from not being pet in a certain day. You can still pet the animal yourself to raise their friendship, but mostly it's used to keep animals at full friendship to stay at full friendship. And it doesn't prevent their friendship or mood from dropping for not being fed or any other reason. One other thing I want to talk about is leaving your animal outside after dark. This can happen if your animals are already outside and you close the little sliding door on them. Now, what will always happen is your animal will lose 20 friendship and whatever mood they had will be cut in half. However, what can happen 50% of the time is one of your animals will just be killed by a wild animal attack. This, of course, removes that animal from your game, and all of your other animals will have a message that says, the animal's name looks stressed and paranoid today. It seems like something bad happened last night. Funnily enough, though, it doesn't affect their friendship or mood, only any animals that were left outside. All I've got for you this time is a chart for the animals. People wanted it, so I made it. As always, there will be a link in the description where you can download it on its own. Nature is everywhere, foraging could be anything, but in this game there's only two things covered by the foraging stat: trees and foraged items. While it makes the skill sound pretty simple, and compared to other skills it really is, there's still quite a few specifics and complexities that I'm gonna go over. In order, we're going to be talking about the trees first, then foraged items, and finally, level rewards. So let's start talking about trees. The basic ones are maple, which you can identify by the visible branches through the leaves, oak, which is similar to maple but with no visible branches, and pine trees, which have a pointed shape. On top of those three, as of version 1.5, we have mahogany trees with more of a square shape on top. There's a few special trees, but we'll go over them later. Each of these trees have a few functions. If you shake them, there's a chance they could drop their seed. These seeds can either be used to grow more trees or crafted into field snacks for energy. Note that seeds won't appear until you hit level 1 foraging. To plant them, all you need to do is select the seed and right-click where you want to plant it. If you put it in the wrong spot, you can use the axe to dig it up and replace it. Once planted, they don't need to be watered. They grow in 5 stages: the seed, the sapling, a small bush, a small tree, and finally the full-grown tree. Every night they have a 20% chance to grow, except on the final growth stage where it'll take twice as long whatever it would normally take. On average, it should take about 24 days for a tree to fully grow, although this can vary drastically with good or bad luck. Note that if a tree is trying to grow into its final stage next to another full-grown tree, it won't. And trees won't grow at all in winter. If you use tree fertilizer, that will ensure that the tree grows as fast as possible, for a total of 5 days. And fertilizer will also allow them to grow in winter. Also, sometimes you'll notice tree seeds randomly planted around your farm. That's because a tree or a stump can spread seeds in a small area around them. This only happens on the farm. Any trees outside of the farm won't spread seeds, but will regrow when cut down. A fully grown tree has 2 main uses: to be cut down or to be tapped. Cutting down trees is one of the main ways to get foraging XP, giving 12 XP for cutting it down and an additional 1 for breaking the stump. It also provides you with 12 to 16 wood, 5 sap, and 0 to 2 of the seed. The stump will give 4 wood and 1 sap. For mahogany trees, instead of wood, you'll get 10 hardwood, and you can only get a max of 1 mahogany seed every time you cut it down. Which leads into our next topic, the tool for foraging, the axe. This is, of course, used to cut down trees, and funnily enough, used for giant crops. The basic axe takes 10 swings to cut down a tree. The copper takes 8 swings, and can now be used on large stumps and certain bushes. The steel axe takes 6 swings and can now cut large logs. The gold axe takes 4 swings, and finally, the iridium axe only takes 2 swings to knock down a tree. The stump of the tree will always take half as many swings as the actual tree does. So 5 with the basic axe, all the way down to 1 swing with the iridium axe. Those large stumps I mentioned can be found on your farm, but won't respawn unless you're on the forest farm, where 3 of them spawn every day. They can also be found in the secret woods, where 6 of them respawn daily. They'll give 2 hardwood, a 10% chance of a mahogany seed,
and 25 foraging experience, being one of the best sources of foraging experience in the entire game. Unfortunately though, you can't get to the secret woods until you destroy the fallen log with the steel axe. There will be a few on your farm, and one blocking the secret woods, and none of them respawn. They give 8 hardwood, and again, 25 foraging experience. Moving on to the other use for trees, tapping trees is one of the most important but underutilized mechanics by new players. Each type of tree will yield a different resource when tapped. Maple trees will give maple syrup every 9 days. It's required for the chef's bundle and an option in the exotic foraging bundle. It's in the cooking recipe for the maple bar and in the crafting recipe for bee houses, which are used for honey, which is a pretty good moneymaker. And they can also be sold for 200 gold or eaten, but they're mostly for the bundles and bee houses. Oak trees give oak resin every 7 to 8 days. It's required for the Enchanter's bundle and again an option for the exotic foraging bundle. It's used in 2 crafting recipes, Deluxe Speed Grow and Kegs. And kegs are one of the best machines for money making in the entire game, as you may know. They also sell for 150 gold and unfortunately cannot be ingested. Pine trees will give you pine tar every 5 to 6 days. It's one of the options for the exotic foraging bundle and is in the crafting recipes for the loom, speed grow, and rain totems. While the items here aren't as important as the other 2, you'll still benefit from these quite a bit, and it can sell for 100 gold. Now, what do you get from tapping the most valuable tree in the game? Sap. It's every day though. Now we're going to talk about the special trees. There's 2 of these in the game. First is the mushroom tree. This can only be encountered by chance in fall. Every day there's a 5% chance of the mushroom tree event happening. After that, the game will choose 10 tiles at random, and if any of those tiles have a tree on it, it'll turn into a mushroom tree. As with any other tree, you can cut it down or tap it. Cutting it down will yield 5 to 6 red or purple mushrooms, and the stump gives 1 mushroom. You also have a 1% chance to get the mushroom cap hat. If it's tapped, it'll randomly give a common, red, or purple mushroom, and it'll yield this once a day in fall, once every 2 days in spring or summer, and it doesn't give you anything in winter. All stumped mushroom trees will regrow in spring, even the ones you cut down yourself. The other type of special tree is palm trees. These are found only in the desert or Ginger Island. They can't be grown from seeds and they can't be tapped. Instead of seeds, they can drop a coconut when cut down or shaken. Otherwise, they'll yield the same things as a regular tree when cut down. Then we have a completely different kind of tree. Fruit trees. Funnily enough, these are the simplest tree of all. All fruit tree saplings are sold by Pierre with the exception of the mango and banana tree, which are exclusive to Ginger Island. All fruit trees take 28 days to grow and will produce 1 fruit every day of their fruiting season. Unlike normal trees, for fruit trees to grow, the 8 spaces surrounding them have to be completely empty, whereas regular trees only stop growing if there's a fully grown tree next to them. For fruit trees, spring has apricots and cherries, summer has oranges and peaches, and fall has apples and pomegranate. If you grow the trees in a greenhouse, they will always give you fruit. If you're wondering which one of these is the most profitable, don't. You won't make money off of this until several years down the line. Instead, I'll let you know that every fruit can be used in the artisan bundle, 3 apples are required for the fodder bundle, and 1 pomegranate is required for the enchanter's bundle. Luckily, both of these are fall fruits, which makes them pretty easy to obtain in year 1. Each fruit also has a bit of use outside bundles. Apricots are needed for fruit salad, oranges are loved by Gus, peaches are loved by Robbins, apples are used in cranberry candy, pomegranates are loved by Elliot, and cherries have a pretty looking tree in spring. Now, in the past, I've seen quite a few people flummoxed by their fruit trees producing coal for some reason. This actually happens because the fruit tree got hit by lightning. After 3 days of producing coal, it'll go back to producing fruit. And that ought to cover everything about trees. Yeah, it's a lot more than I thought it'd be too. Now on to the foraged items. So each season has its own forageable items, so we'll go season by season. There are also areas with their own special forageables, which we'll go over after. So for spring, we've got horseradish, most common in the Cindersap Forest and loved by Krobus, daffodils, most common in Pelican Town and loved by Sandy, leeks, most common in mountains and backwoods, loved by George, and dandelions, most common in Cindersap Forest, loved by no one. All of these give 7 foraging experience when picked up, and this will remain true for every forageable item we talk about, unless I mention otherwise. These 4 are all required for the Spring Foraging Bundle and will be crafted into Spring Seeds. Spring Seeds, when planted, can grow into one of the 4 forageables randomly. And just like with normal crops, they need to be watered each day and fertilizer will work on them. Their quality will still depend on your foraging stat though, instead of the farming stat. Instead of planting these seeds, you could outright sell the Spring Seeds, as they sell for more than the sum of the forageables you use to craft it. You could also go a step further and use the Spring Seeds to craft tea saplings, which is unlocked by getting 2 hearts with Carolyn, and the tea sapling will sell for even more money. Then we have spring onions. They're an odd case. These can be found growing near the sewer entrance in Cindersap Forest and only give you 3 foraging experience. They can possibly show up in the remixed Spring Foraging Bundle, but other than that, they have no real use. They sell for almost nothing, and they give very small amounts of energy and health when eaten. You can multiply the sell price of them by 5 by seeing Vincent and Jass's 8-heart cutscene, but at that point in the game, the money is still going to be insignificant. If you manage to get into the secret woods this early, cheating or otherwise, you can find morels and common mushrooms there. You can also find morels on the forest farm in spring. On the 15th through 18th, it's salmonberry season, which means salmonberries can be found growing on bushes all around the valley. These salmonberries may not seem like much at first, but they can be a great source of energy if you manage to get enough of them. The amount of berries you get from each bush depends on your foraging level. You get 1 berry to start, 2 berries at level 4, 3 berries at level 8, and 4 berries at level 12, which can be achieved with food buffs. It might be worth checking the saloon every day in your first spring to keep an eye out for any food that can buff the foraging stat in the random food slot. That way you can reach level 4 in time for your first berry season. Unfortunately, all berries you get from bushes don't give any experience, and they will always be normal quality. They will become iridium quality with the botanist profession though. Now for summer, there's only 3 basic forageables this time. Grapes, which are loved by Vincent and also happen to be a fall crop. They're most common in the backwoods and the mountain. Spice berries, most common in Cindersap Forest. And sweet peas, which are loved by Sandy and are the only forageable you can find in Pelican Town. In the secret woods, you can find fiddlehead ferns, which are required for the chef's bundle, and red mushrooms. Weird thing about fiddleheads, in this game they're classified as a vegetable, so they will benefit from the tiller profession that increases the sell price of crops. And on the forest farm map, you can find common mushrooms alongside the 3 normal forageables. Similar to spring's berry season, summer has a pseudo-holiday event for foraging. On summer 12th to the 14th, more forageables will spawn on the beach due to crab mating season, I guess? Also, good to mention that summer is the only time you can find rainbow shells on the beach. Its only real use is for one of the steps in the Mysterious Key quest, but it also sells for 300 gold at base, more than any other forageable. For fall, we're going back to 4 base forageables. The common mushroom, which is most common in Cindersap Forest, wild plums, most common at the bus stop, hazelnuts, most common in the backwoods and mountain, and blackberries, most common in Pelican Town. These are the 4 required for the fall foraging bundle and used to make fall seeds. In the secret woods, you can now find chanterelles and red mushrooms. The only especially notable thing about chanterelles is they're used in the life elixir crafting recipe. And on the forest farm, you can find chanterelles, common mushrooms, purple mushrooms, and red mushrooms. Fall has its own berry season on the 8th through the 11th, this time with blackberries. These work the same as salmonberry season. They'll pop up on bushes around the valley, and the higher your foraging level, the more you get. These sell for a little bit more than salmonberries and heal more energy as well. I like to use these as my main source of energy for the second half of the year. One oddity with fall is on the 14th and onwards, maple trees will now start dropping hazelnuts instead of maple seeds, only by shaking. This can be useful if you're trying to make some of those last few fall seeds. And you might think that winter is slow for foraging as well as farming, but that's not true. Our 4 main forageables are winter roots and snow yams, both of which aren't found sitting around, but are actually found by hoeing soil. They work similar to clay, and as such, if you know how to clay farm, you can actually use that method to farm these as well. Then we have crystal fruit, most common at the railroad, and crocus, most common in Pelican Town. It's also worth mentioning, all of these except the crocus can be found on floors 40 to 70 of the mines. Winter roots and snow yams are found there by hoeing as well, and crystal fruit can drop from dust sprites. As always, these 4 are required for the winter foraging bundle and make winter seeds. Interestingly though, there's one more forageable that can be found. Holly. This spawns as any other forageable wood, as well as being the only forageable found in the secret woods. These have practically no use at all unless you have the remixed winter foraging bundle. Other than that, they can make a nice Santa blouse in the sewing machine. The beach once again has a forageable exclusive to this season, the Nautilus shell. It's required for the field research bundle. One special thing about forageables in winter is that even though crops won't grow, winter seeds will. So I like to use all of that farming space with winter seeds since I'm not using it anyway. And that leaves us with the level up rewards. At level 1, you get the crafting recipes for spring seeds, field snacks, which are made from the 3 regular tree seeds, it heals a bit of energy, and it also allows the trees to start dropping seeds. So I'd try to pick forageable items to reach level 1, then start cutting the trees. At level 2, you get the survival burger, which is an odd cooking recipe that needs bread, cave carrots, and eggplants. There's pretty much no way that you'll have the ingredients for this for a while, much less the ability to even cook them. I don't really understand this unlock. At level 3, you get tappers. We've gone over them. They get items from trees. At level 4, you get the charcoal kiln, which turns 10 wood into 1 coal. I use these quite a bit. Coal is one of the resources that a lot of people find themselves running out of. You also get summer seeds and an extra berry from bushes. At level 5, you get the option between the professions Forester and Gatherer. Forester gives you 25% more wood when chopping trees, which includes hardwood stumps, as well as gives you a focus on trees for your level 10 profession. Gatherer gives you a 20% chance to get 2 foraged items every time you pick 1, and this only applies to foraged items on the ground. This applies to anything found in the fruit bat cave, as well as truffles from pigs. It'll also give you a focus on forageable items at level 10. I'll be honest, this one's pretty much up to you for the most part. Wood is a very valuable resource, and while I don't consider Gatherer on its own to be great, its level 10 professions are really good. On level 6, you get lightning rods, which will produce a battery the day after thunderstorms, and they'll also redirect lightning to stop it from striking your crops or machines. You get fall seeds, and the beach warp totem, which teleports you to this statue on the beach. Not one of the best totems, but it's easy to make. At level 7, you get the crafting recipe for winter seeds, and the mountain warp totem, which teleports you to this statue in the mountains. Again, not super helpful, and tree fertilizer. We went over this, it's surprisingly good. At level 8, you get the farm warp totem. Now this is a great warp, although it's a little expensive because it needs honey. And you also get an extra berry from bushes. At level 9, you get the rain totem, always nice to have just in case you need to catch a fish, water your crops, or just make everyone stay in their house and make their paths easy. And the cookout kit. You can use this to cook food anywhere, but it's pretty situational. For level 10, let's go over the forester professions first. Lumberjack makes all trees have a chance to drop hardwood, and Tapper makes syrup sell for 25% more. This includes oak resin, maple syrup, and pine tar. As I said before, the best part of this path is giving a lot of resources, and Lumberjack is great for that. Syrups, on the other hand, are mostly just used for crafting other items, and they don't sell for that much in the first place. If you're looking to make more money, I'd go with one of the Gatherer professions, which are Botanist, which makes every foraged item iridium quality, and Tracker, which shows the location of forageable items with a little arrow on the corner of the screen. This includes worm spots and panning locations. So this is a situation where I'd say Tracker is better if you still need to fill out the museum, or if you're looking for the luck ring through panning. Once you finish all that, I'd swap to Botanist because doubling the price of every single foraged item will net you a ton of money, especially if you have pigs to give you truffles. It also applies to the berries on bushes, making them a better food item. Now, just to round off the video, I want to go over a few things that just kinda didn't come up, but I still consider in the foraging section. First, tea saplings. This is a crafting recipe that you unlock after reaching 2 hearts with Carolyn. It takes 2 of any seasonal seed, 5 fiber, and 5 wood. These can be planted, and then they'll take 20 days to grow, no need to water, and will produce 1 tea leaf every day for the last week of any season. The tea leaf can then be put in a keg to give you green tea, which is a drink that gives a max energy buff, which is unique, but kind of useless. The sell price is also nothing special. Next are fiber seeds. These are unlocked from the community cleanup special order. They're crafted from mixed seeds, sap, and clay, and when planted will take 7 days to grow and then produce a lot of fiber when scythed. I know this could kind of be seen as farming, but they don't need any water to grow and don't give farming experience, so I kind of see them as a separate thing. I've looked forward to talking about the most important part of the game for a while now. Fishing. If I'm honest with y'all, I'd say that this is one of the most important skills of the game, second only to farming. Not only is it a great source of income, but it has its little fishy tendrils spreading out to other parts of the game that you would think are normally separated from fishing. Alas, we all came from the water, and eventually we'll all return to it. Let's start talking about those fishing mechanics. So, you'll get your fishing rod on day 2 after you've gotten the letter from Willy to come meet him. Upon first using your fishing rod, you'll have a little minigame. This determines how far you'll cast the bobber. The more full the bar is, the farther you'll cast the line. If you have a nearly full bar, you'll get a little perfect note. This, contrary to popular belief, means nothing. What actually matters is where your bobber lands. Every square of water has a depth number. This number is based on how many tiles away from land the square is. So your zones will look something like this. Notice it starts at 0, there is no zone 4, you go straight from 3 to 5. A higher zone has many benefits, such as a lower chance to catch trash, higher quality fish on average, a higher chance to catch more difficult fish, different items from treasure chests, and some fish just straight up cannot be caught in lower fishing zones. In addition, if you ever see these bubbles, casting in them will increase the zone of that spot by 1, as well as quadrupling the fish bite speed. Also, if you need to, you can slightly adjust the spot that your bobber lands by holding down a direction during the cast. Alright, so we cast the bobber. Now for minigame 2, we wait for an exclamation point to appear above our head. Just press the use button if you see it. If you caught a fish, say hello to minigame number 3. Here you simply need to follow the little fish icon with your fishing bar. Pressing the A button makes it go up, and it falls down on its own. Unless you're in multiplayer, time will be paused during this section, so don't feel rush. Simple, easy, the most despised part of the game. The thing is, each time you level up, your bar in this minigame gets larger, alongside other buffs that you'll obtain as you progress through the game. So you're getting the hardest fishing minigames right at the beginning. If you think it's hard, yeah, it is. Best advice I can give, stick to easier fish to start, and buy the training rod if you really think you need it. It's available in Willy's shop right at the beginning, and it'll increase the size of the bar to as if you were level 5. Also, if you keep the bar on the fish for the entire time, you'll get a perfect catch, which increases the quality of the fish by 1 stage. This is one of the 2 ways to catch an iridium quality fish, as they'll never be caught naturally. Speaking of, as your fishing level goes up, you'll naturally start to catch higher quality fish, just like how foraging and farming levels work with quality. During this fishing minigame, there's a small chance that a treasure chest icon will pop up. This has its own little catch bar, although remember that the fish's bar will still decrease while you go for the chest. It's a little bit of risk and reward. If you don't catch the fish, you don't get the chest. There is a smorgasbord of items that you could possibly get from this. Just like fish, many of the items you can fish up in chests have their own little requirements to get. The most common items you'll fish up in order is bait, various resources like coal or ore, and if you're in spring, rice shoots. Some of the rarer items are a whole collections of artifacts for the museum, geodes, gemstones, weapons, rings, boots, even a prismatic shard if you're really lucky. I never skip out on a chest because you never know what you're gonna get. Now let's talk about the tool of the trade, rods. By default, you'll start out with the bamboo pole. This has no special properties, it is simply your vessel with which to catch the fish. A fun thing about rods though is that they can be freely bought if you lose one. The second rod is the training rod. It's not an upgrade, rather it's there to help anyone struggling with the fishing minigame. It only costs 25 gold, it's available right from the start, and as I said before, it sets the fishing bar size to level 5. However, any fish caught from it can only ever be normal quality. The training rod can only catch fish with a difficulty of 50 and under. Funnily enough, this rule does not apply to legendary fish. You can still catch them with the training rod. One thing that separates the fishing rod from other tools is that you don't upgrade it at the blacksmith. Instead, once you hit a certain level threshold, you'll be able to buy a better rod at Willy's shop.
After getting level 2, you can buy the fiberglass rod for 1,800 gold. You can now use bait. There are 4 different types of bait in the game. Regular bait, 5 can be crafted with 1 bug meat, or it can be bought in Willie's shop for 5 gold. This halves the time it takes for fish to bite and decreases the chance of catching trash. Magnets, which are craftable at level 9, 3 per 1 iron bar, or it can be bought for 1,000 gold. It has all of the properties of regular bait, but also increases the chance of getting a treasure chest by 15%, which adds on to the original 15%, to get a total of a 30% chance to catch a treasure chest. And you may notice that the description says fish aren't crazy about the taste. This means nothing. They're a direct upgrade to regular bait. Wild bait, unlocked from Linus's 4-heart cutscene. Yes, that one. It's crafted with 10 fiber, 5 slime, and 5 bug meat, making 5 wild bait. These lower the bite time even further by 62.5%. It also gives you a 25% chance to catch 2 fish at once, and that chance increases with higher luck. This is the only bait that cannot be bought. Finally, short little 1.5 update spoiler here. Magic bait, unlocked in the Walnut Room on Ginger Island for 20 gems. 5 can be crafted with radioactive ore and 3 bug meat, or it can be bought for 5 gems each. It has the same effect as regular bait and can catch any fish in an area, regardless of season, weather, or time of day. Note that the fish still needs to be able to spawn in that type of water. You can't catch freshwater fish in the ocean. Then, at level 6 fishing, you can buy the iridium rod for 7,500 gold. As well as having bait from the previous rod, it can now also have tackle. Tackle can provide a wide variety of useful effects, a lot being good in specific situations. So let's go over all of them. The spinner, unlocked at level 6, reduces the maximum bite time by 3.75 seconds. The trap bobber, also unlocked at level 6, makes the catch meter decrease 33% slower than it normally would. Lead bobber, level 6, makes your bar not bounce if it drops to the bottom. The treasure hunter, level 7, increases the chance for a chest by 5%, and the catch bar won't deplete while you're on the chest. The cork bobber, level 7, makes the bar 24 pixels bigger, equivalent to 3 level ups. The dressed spinner, level 8, reduces the maximum bite time by 7.5 seconds. The barbed hook, level 8, makes the bar cling to the fish, meaning it'll slowly move in the direction of the fish while the fish is in the bar, trying to center it within the bar. The quality bobber, unlocked after the Juicy Bugs Wanted special order, raises the quality of all fish caught by 1 stage. This is the only way to get iridium fish outside of a perfect catch. And last, the curiosity lure randomly dropped from mummies or crates increases the chance to catch rarer fish and decreases the chance of trash. Moving on from rods, there's one tool that's adjacent, if a little less useful than the rods. Crab pots. You can place these down in any body of water, fill them with bait, and overnight you'll either get a crab pot fish or trash. They're not the most useful thing in the game, but it is a sort of passive income. There are 2 different sets of fish you can catch, freshwater and saltwater. Placing a crab pot in any freshwater will always yield the same fish, and putting it in any saltwater, again, will produce all of the same fish. This can also be used as a way to not play the fishing minigame to get your fishing level up, because you do get 5 fishing experience every time you empty a crab pot, even if it's trash. And if you don't want to use the crafting recipe, they're also sold in Willie's shop for 1,500 gold, and they're unlocked at level 3. Finally, I'd like to talk about fish ponds. These are a type of building that you can have Robin build on your farm. These essentially farmify fish. You put a fish in and they'll automatically populate, yes, even if there's just 1, up to 10. Every few fish, they'll ask you for a specific item to unlock their population limit, usually something related to the fish. We'd feel more at home with a pickles. And I don't even know what sturgeon want diamonds for, but sure, who cares? Each fish will make roe, the value of which is always the sale price of the fish divided by 2, plus 30. So the more expensive the fish, the more valuable the roe. The lava eel and the ice pip being the 2 most valuable roes. Most fish also have a chance to give you a few items that aren't roe, but most of the time the chances are so low that it's not something to be depended on. Oh, also, as a final note, legendary fish cannot be used in fish ponds, so don't even think about it. Alright, now for the time we've all been waiting for.
The fish. This is why this video took so long. Do y'all know how many fish are in this game? Too many. More than there are crops. Anyway, here is our first chart. It is for all of the spring fish. For the most part, these fish aren't exclusively available in spring, but they are locked to a couple of seasons. So going over the chart from left to right, on the left we have the fish and their name. We have their sale price. This is at normal quality with no profession buffs at all. The conditions you catch them in, if there needs to be a specific weather pattern, it'll be shown on the left, and then it'll have the location and then the time. Then the amount of experience you earn from catching it. Note that getting a perfect catch multiplies that number by 2.4. The quality of the fish, however, does not affect it. Then I have the level. I put level up there because it's the only word that kind of makes sense that could fit in that spot. This is the difficulty of the fish. Each fish has a pattern. For example, dart means it'll dart around very quickly and take a pause in between each dart. Sinker means it will only dart upwards and then it'll slowly float back down. Smooth means it won't dart around, it still can move quite quickly though. Although it's not on this list, floater is the opposite of sinker. It'll dart downwards and then float back up. And mixed means it can do any of the previous patterns, it'll change every few seconds or so. Then the number next to that is basically how quickly it executes that pattern. For example, a 30 dart fish won't dart as often or as far or as fast, whereas maybe a 100 dart fish will be very difficult to pin down. Of course, the difficulty number isn't the only thing you're looking at when it comes to straight up difficulty. Some patterns are outright harder than others. Dart is going to be harder than either sinker or floater because it can move in both directions unpredictably. All things to consider. Then in this last section, I have interesting items that you can get from a fish pond if you have that fish in there. It's very empty on this screen, but trust me, we'll get some more interesting ones later. The legendary fish for each season will always be at the bottom of every page. Obviously, it's worth a lot more, it's a lot harder, gives a lot more experience, everything. There's a couple of conditions missing from the legendary fish simply because I couldn't fit them in. For the legend, you do need to be level 10 to hook it. It needs to be caught in a fishing zone of 5, which means it needs to be 5 tiles away from any land. Oftentimes, the game will give you a specific spot to catch the fish that's intended, but it can be in any fishing zone of 5. Not much else to say about this page. In general, the spring fish are easier, they sell for less money, with the exception of the catfish, which is very difficult and also only available in the rain. You might be saying, however, this isn't all of the fish that can be caught in spring, and you would be right. I have a separate table for fish that can be caught in any season. These are year-round fish. There is truly nothing much special about any of these. The carp is the easiest fish to catch in the entire game, so there's that. These also tend to be the cheapest of all fish, with the exception of the largemouth bass, selling for 100 gold. I also want to point out that you see R plus L on chub. That means river and lake. Basically, it means that you can catch this thing in any freshwater, outside of like the special ponds like in the Secret Woods. Now, those two tables were easy. Moving on to the summer fish, you can see why this took so long. There's so many fish. As you can see, our fish pond area is a little bit more colorful this time, with rainbow trout being a standout, giving you both rainbow shells and prismatic shards, only 0.1% of the time. Super cucumbers also being pretty cool and being the first of the fish that we've gone over that changed the color of your pond. I want to talk about the Dorado really quick. It ends up being one of the last fish that a lot of people catch, mainly for the fact that it's not only just caught in the river, it's only caught in the forest river. It is the only fish in the entire game, other than, you know, a legendary fish that we'll talk about later, that is only caught in the forest river and not in the town river. Moving down, we have the octopus, which is the hardest to catch fish in the entire game that isn't legendary. And then down to the legendary fish, the crimson fish. It only requires level 5 fishing, and it does need to be caught over on the docks near the tide pools. That's just about the only requirement it has. Oh, and also for sturgeon, you'll see caviar on its fish pond area. That's because whenever you put its roe into a preserves jar, you will get caviar instead of aged roe, and it does actually have one specific use. You'll probably find it while playing through the game. Moving on to fall, one less fish than summer. I almost like to think of fall as a mix of spring and summer fish because it has so many similarities with both of those seasons. The catfish comes back if you were too low of a level to be able to catch it mechanically back in spring. There's quite a few rain-locked fish, so make sure you pay attention to that if you're trying to complete all the fish caught. I also want to mention the sea cucumber. It's the yellow one. I just titled it Cuke because nothing else would really fit. It is used in a very good food recipe, the Lucky Lunch. This increases your luck stat by 3 and can be really good for going through the mines or really doing almost anything in the game. Midnight carp is another often missed fish because it can only be caught after 10 p.m., which is one of the latest times any fish starts to be available in the entire game. And it's only caught in the lake, which is a not very popular fishing spot. Lastly, the angler only requires level 3 fishing. It is the easiest of all of the legendary fish to catch at only 85 difficulty. It does, however, need to specifically be caught in the northernmost spot of the town river. And since the town has hardly any fishing zones of 5, there is no fishing zone requirement here. It just needs to be in the right spot of the river. And finally, winter fish. There are only 3 fish here that you haven't seen before. The perch, which is pretty easy to find. It can be caught in the river or the lake at any time. It's also a very easy fish. On the other end, we have the squid, which can only be caught in the ocean after 6 p.m. and is pretty difficult, but if you put it into a fish pond, it can give you squid ink, which is useful for a couple of cooking recipes. I also want to give special attention to the red snapper. It has the rain requirement. You might know that it does not naturally rain in winter at all, so the only way to ever catch the red snapper in winter is to use a rain totem. And then moving on to the legendary fish, we have the glacier fish. It requires level 6 fishing to catch, and it requires that you stand on one specific tile. This tile at the bottom of the arrow tip island at the bottom of the forest river. And even after that, it does still require that you fish in a fishing zone of 5. If you meet all of those constraints, it is the most likely to be hooked legendary fish with a 50% chance of getting hooked. And did you think we were done? We have one more table of fish, the special fish table. All of these fish, for the most part, can be caught in any season, but it needs to be in a very specific area. You'll also notice that every single fish has unique items that you can get if it's put in a fish pond. This is the main reason that I included it on the table. So to start, you have the first 4 fish all caught in the mines. The lava eel once again changing the color of your fish pond and giving you the most expensive roe, as well as giving you many useful items out of its fish pond. Also notable that the stonefish, ice pip, and lava eel give you their respective geodes from the mines. The sandfish and scorpion carp are both caught in the desert. I don't know why they're not catchable after 8 p.m., but they're not. And I will still hold that the scorpion carp is the hardest fish to catch in the entire game because it has the highest difficulty level with the dart pattern, which I personally find to be the hardest. The wood skip's pretty normal, it's found in the secret woods pond. Void salmon are only caught in the Witch's Swamp, and before we move on, I also want to talk about the Witch's Swamp a little bit more. You have the mission where you need to bring void mayonnaise to the henchman to get to the magic ink and all that, we all know it. You can just straight up fish out void mayonnaise from the Witch's Swamp. This can only be done while you're taking on that mission, so this could save you a bit of time. Slime jacks found in the mutant bug lair. They also change your fish pond color, as do the void salmon, I forgot to mention. Lionfish, blue discus, and stingrays were all added in the 1.5 update, and they're all found on Ginger Island. Lionfish in the ocean, blue discus in any freshwater, and stingrays specifically in Pirate's Cove. They all also have crazy items that can be found in fish ponds. The stingrays being the most egregious, giving you some of the most valuable items in the entire game. And the lionfish literally gives you the most valuable item. The tiger slime egg sells for 8,000 gold. Next we have the 3 night market fish. Yes, I know that these should technically be in winter, but they couldn't fit, so here they are. These are caught during the night market on the 15th to the 17th of winter. You take the submarine down to the bottom of the ocean and you catch them there. Fun fact, you can actually catch them whenever you want if you have magic bait. All you need to do is fish in this area with it. Doesn't matter when, doesn't matter what season, you can catch them there. It's pretty neat. There's quite a few valuable items you can get from their ponds, the pearl of course being a universally loved item. Farm orc totems are always helpful, and the treasure chests you can get from spookfish are worth 5,000 gold, so, you know, that's pretty good. I would be amiss if I didn't mention that the blobfish can be tailored into a blobfish mask. Finally, we have the last of our legendary fish, the mutant carp. It is only caught in the sewers. There's really no requirements to catching it. As long as you can catch an 80 difficulty dartfish, you're good. Okay, so there's a few more fish. Wow, who to get more fish? Crazy. There's the crab pot fish. I'm not gonna make a whole table for these because they're a lot simpler than all of the others. These fish come in 2 sections, one for ocean fish, one for freshwater fish. We'll do the freshwater fish first because they're simple. They're all very cheap. You have the crayfish, snail, and periwinkle. Crayfish sells for 75 gold, snail 65, and periwinkle 20 whopping gold. When put into a fish pond, they all either give you trash or they can give you mixed seeds or a mountain warp totem. There's a bit more to catch in the ocean. You can get lobsters, clams, crabs, cockles, mussels, shrimp, and oyster. It's important to note that while clams, cockles, mussels, and oysters can all wash up on the beach and be foraged, they won't count towards your fishing list. They have to be caught in a crab pot. Lobsters and crabs are the most notable of all of them just because they're worth a bit of money. Lobsters 120 and crabs 100. The rest can just be turned into sashimi for selling. When put into a fish pond, well, first of all, clams are the only thing identified as a fish in the entire game that cannot be put into a fish pond. Don't ask why. The rest will all either give you trash, coral, sea urchins, a beach warp totem, or a nautilus shell. Although crabs are a bit of a special case, they don't give you pearls in their fish pond. However, if you get a fish pond with 10 crabs and go talk to Willy, he'll give you a pearl. So that's kind of neat. And that should be every single fish. Oh my god. So we can finally move on to the level up rewards of the fishing skill. At level 1, your casting distance is simply increased by 1 tile. At level 2, you get the bait recipe, and the fiberglass rod and bait are unlocked in Willy's fish shop. At level 3, you unlock crab pots, which we've gone over extensively, and the cooking recipe for the dish of the sea, which gives you the second best fishing buff with +3. At level 4, you unlock the recycling machine. You can put items that are considered trash into this to make a different useful item, except for Joja Cola. And here's a short chart sourced from the wiki that tells you what items you can get from which trash. And once again, your casting distance is increased by 1 tile. At level 5, we have our first choice of professions. With the fisher profession, fishes are worth 25% more when sold, or the trapper profession, resources required to craft crab pots are reduced. For reference, that changes the ingredients from 3 iron bars and 40 wood to 2 copper bars and 25 wood. So we're obviously heading in the fishing path and the crab pot path. Honestly, choose whichever mechanic you like more. I know a lot of people really hate the fishing minigame. In that case, crab pots. It's an easy level 10 over time. However, if you take the fishing path, both of the level 10 professions are very useful. One helping you with making money and the other helping you with completing the museum. So it's really strong. Can't deny that. At level 6, we unlock the iridium rod in Willy's shop, which means we start unlocking tackle as well. You get the crafting recipes for the spinner and the trap bobber, and in Willy's shop, you get the lead bobber, spinner, and trap bobber. At level 7, we have more tackle, the cork bobber and treasure hunter recipes, and they're also unlocked in Willy's shop. At level 8, we get the worm bin crafting recipe, which is perhaps one of the most hilariously not worth it items in the entire game. It has a super expensive recipe, and it just gives you 2 to 5 bait every day. You could just outright buy the bait for cheaper. For reference, I just want to go over this really quick. If you buy all of the materials that it takes to make a worm bin, it'll take 267 days for the bait to pay off the price that you spent on the worm bin. It's almost funny how bad it is. I use it for aesthetics more than anything else. You also unlock the barbed hook and dressed spinner recipes, which are also unlocked in Willy's shop, and your casting distance is once again increased by 1 tile. At level 9, you unlock the seafoam pudding cook recipe, which gives you the best fishing buff in the game at +4. You unlock the magnet bait crafting recipe, and it's also unlocked in Willy's shop. Now for our level 10 professions. If you chose the fisher path, you'll have angler, fish are worth 50% more when sold, or pirate, chance to find treasure doubled. Now, one thing I want to go over here is that the angler profession overwrites the fisher profession. It's just another 25% boost. The pirate profession, on the other hand, does not overwrite the 25% boost you already have. Basically, in my eyes, if you haven't completed the museum, go for the pirate profession. It is so useful for that. Otherwise, more money is always great. This is also a situation where you can just stockpile a ton of fish, swap over to the angler profession for one day, sell it all, and swap back if you really want to. Over on the trapper section, we have Mariner, which makes crab pots no longer produce junk, and Lure Master, which makes crab pots not require bait. If you're a crab pot person, both of these are very valuable. However, Mariner will give you the better gold per day increase if that's what you're looking for. Bait is ultimately extremely cheap and doesn't affect your profit that much. Or, maybe you're lazy and you want to use Lure Master. That's okay too. These two are pretty balanced in my opinion. Although overall, if you want to go with efficiency, you definitely want to take the Fisher route.
Hey! Don't let the cave-in get you down, sucker!
This may be controversial, but I would say that my favorite skill in the game is mining. Because what's the point of farming if in the downtime you don't have something exciting to do while waiting for your crops to grow? Now you may say that the guides for mining and combat ought to be combined, but let me assure you that there's plenty of separate mechanics that it's worth going over individually. So with that said, here is the table of contents. First, we're going to go through the overall mining mechanics. Then we'll have a section for rocks and tools, which is extensive, I guarantee you. That's all we'll cover this video. Next time we'll talk about the dungeons and level up rewards. This took a lot longer than I thought it would. So first of all, what exactly constitutes mining? Basically, breaking a rock. Whether it's with a pickaxe or a bomb, or even from an enemy's explosion, it makes no difference. Breaking a rock is the one and only way of gaining mining experience. Rocks can provide all sorts of materials, like things needed for crafting, like stone or ores. Geodes that can be broken open give you even more materials or things to donate to the museum. And valuable gems that can either be sold for profit or make great gifts to many of the villagers around town. And each of those resources have a machine related to them. Your first mining machine is the furnace. This is probably the first one you'll unlock once you obtain copper ore from any source. Clint will visit you the next day and give you the crafting recipe for it. It's made with copper and stone, and this is the way that you're going to turn your raw ore into bars. Not only do bars sell for more money than the raw materials used to make it, but it's also required to upgrade all of your tools and make some of the best crafting recipes in the game. And to smelt, all you need is 5 of the raw ore and 1 coal. Put it into the furnace, and depending on the rarity of the material, it'll take either a short or very long time to smelt, ranging from taking 30 in-game minutes for copper, all the way to 9 hours and 20 minutes for the extremely late-game radioactive ore. Of course, we'll be going over the exact areas to get these ores later in the video. That's not the only thing you can put into furnaces though. Quartz and fire quartz, which can just be found lying on the grounds of the mines, can be smelted into refined quartz. Regular quartz making 1 refined quartz, and fire quartz making 3. These are also used for many crafting recipes in the game. Although it should be noted that refined quartz isn't liked by any characters, but fire quartz is a universal like for everyone except for Leah, Linus, and Pierre. The last thing you can put in the furnace is a bouquet. Normally the bouquet is used to start dating someone that you have 8 hearts with. However, if you wish to stop dating someone, you can put it into the furnace. It'll quickly turn into a wilted bouquet, and you can give that to whoever you would like to stop dating. Our next machine is the Geode Crusher. For the cost of 1 piece of coal, you can use this to crush a piece of geode to find out what is inside. It's a pretty late unlock though. You'll have to play until fall when you unlock the special orders board, and then you'll have to wait for Clint to put his special order, Cave Patrol, on the board. And after that, you'll be given the crafting recipe for the Geode Crusher. Lucky us, up until that point, you can just go into the blacksmith shop and pay Clint 25 gold to open the geode for you. And coal can be a pretty scarce resource depending on the way you play, so this is the preferred option for many players anyway, even after unlocking the Geode Crusher. Each type of geode, regular, frozen, and magma, has its own set of minerals that it can contain. There's a couple of basic resources like stone or copper ore, that they all share though. The Omni Geode is a bit of a special case. It's fairly rare and has a low chance to be found at any level of the mines, and has the ability to contain any mineral from any of the 3 previous kinds of geodes, as well as having a low 1 in 250 chance for a prismatic shard, which the other geodes don't have. There are 2 geodes beyond this that are a bit rarer than all of the others. The Artifact Trove only has 3 sources, as a trade for 5 Omni Geodes at the Desert Trader, a low chance to drop from the Haunted Skull enemy, and it can be found from artifact spots on Ginger Island, which is a pretty late game area. It has a chance of containing many different artifacts that are unique to just it, so you'll have to at least find a few of these to complete the museum. The next geode we'll talk about is a little spoilerish for Ginger Island, so go ahead and skip through the geode section if you wouldn't like to see that. Alright, the golden coconut can only be found on Ginger Island. Your best chance is getting it from shaking down coconuts from a coconut tree. It can also rarely be found by digging up artifact spots, and after you've cracked open your first one, you can trade 10 regular coconuts for 1 golden coconut at the Island Trader. It basically contains a bunch of exclusive items to Ginger Island, such as the 2 new tree saplings, the 2 new crops, mahogany seeds, and the golden helmet. It also has a chance of containing iridium ore, or the fossilized skull, which is required if you want to collect all of the golden walnuts from Ginger Island. Speaking of which, the first golden coconut you break open will always contain 1 golden walnut. Also, just a quick tip about geodes. The items that you get from geodes are predetermined by your save file seed. It's basically a super long list that you go through in sequential order. The thing is, the list for opening geodes through the Geode Crusher is 1 position behind the list for the blacksmith. So, if you break open a geode and get something super rare, such as a prismatic shard, if you open up that same type of geode in a Geode Crusher immediately after, you'll get the same item. Use that to your advantage. Moving on to the last type of machine, the Crystallarium. This one's pretty simple. It's very expensive to make, and it isn't even unlocked until level 9 mining, but you can just put any gem you like into it to duplicate it over a certain amount of time. Generally, the rarer the gem, the longer it takes to duplicate. Basically, anything that's on the Minerals tab of your Collections page can be duplicated. But if you're wondering what's best to duplicate, if you're looking for straight up money, the diamond is your best bet. Not only do you only have to check the Crystallarium once every 5 days, but it just straight up gives you the best gold per day. As for other items you might like to duplicate, each of the other main gems have a good item that you can trade for at the Desert Trader. You can get spicy eels from rubies, which are great for spelunking, cloth from aquamarine, which has its uses, cheese from emeralds, which is a good food item, and probably most importantly, you can trade 1 jade for a staircase, which basically sends you down a floor in the mines or the Skull Cavern for free. This is the way that many people with an aversion to mining get through the mines. You just set up a bunch of Crystallariums with jades, trade them all for staircases on Sundays, and profit. Any of the other gems have their niche uses, like as a loved item for some characters, but you'll generally not be duplicating them too often. Personally, as opposed to making money, I think quartz are great for duplicating, since you can trade 5 of them for a bomb at the Desert Trader. Also, if you ever want the original gem that you put into the Crystallarium back out, just break the Crystallarium with the pickaxe and you'll get it back. And real quick before we move on to the tools and rocks, let's talk a little bit more about the blacksmith. This is your main shop for anything mining related. As I said earlier, you can break open geodes here. It's going to be your main way of breaking open geodes throughout the entire game. You can buy copper, iron, and gold ore along with coal, although I'd say the prices are very high, especially after year 1, when most of the prices double. But it can be a good emergency source if you really need it. And then you can also upgrade most of your tools here. Each tool has a copper, steel, gold, and iridium upgrade, which either makes the tool much more efficient at breaking whatever it's supposed to break, or in the case of the hoe and the watering can, gives it a larger range in one use. You also have the trash can here, which was added in version 1.4. Upgrading the trash can allows you to get a little bit of the money back from any item that you throw in the trash. The copper trash can gives you 15% of the value, steel gives you 30%, gold gives you 45%, and iridium gives you 60%. Also, note that these tool upgrades are some of the most costly items in the game. Not only do you need 5 of whatever bar you're upgrading to, but copper will cost 2,000 gold, steel will cost 5 5,000, gold will cost 10,000, and each iridium tool will take you 25,000 gold. And one last thing, I find visiting the blacksmith a good time to gift Clint some items. He loves all of your basic gems, excluding diamonds for some reason, and he also loves gold and iridium bars. He's really easy to find gifts for. And once you do start becoming friends with him, he'll start sending you copper, iron, and gold bars in the mail, so super useful friendship there. Now it's time to finally move on to talking about the pickaxes and rocks. Except not, because we also have bombs. These are extremely useful for when you're going mining because they can allow you to break multiple rocks at once without using energy to swing your pickaxe. There's 3 tiers of bombs: the cherry bomb, the bomb, and the mega bomb, each with increasingly large explosion radiuses. You'll unlock the crafting recipes for them as you go up in mining level. Certain enemies have them as drops, and you can also buy them from the dwarf after you've donated the 4 dwarf scrolls to the museum and blown up the rock blocking his shop. So as I stated earlier, upgrading your pickaxe makes it easier to break rocks. Before I started working on this video, I assumed that it reduced the amount of hits that every rock takes by 1. That is not true in the slightest. So I tested everything myself and I made a chart. This is a chart of every single type of small rock in the game, along with every pickaxe and how many hits it takes to break them. As you can see, most rocks going from the regular pickaxe to the copper pickaxe halves the amount of hits it takes, making the copper pickaxe the most important upgrade to get. Comparatively, going from the gold pickaxe to the iridium pickaxe doesn't really change that much. In fact, you'll notice that iridium nodes still take the same amount of hits, despite it being as high of a number as 4. Although if we look at Skull Cavern rocks, which is the 4th one on the list, those go from 2 hits to 1, which is actually a very important number to go down on. So let's start talking about all these rocks, why don't we? For our first section, we have regular rocks. Each of these correlate to a certain biome in the mines, or the Skull Cavern and then the volcano, each of them taking more and more hits as you move on. First, I've listed how much experience each rock gives you, although there is a bit of a discrepancy for these first 5 rocks. If you look at the items that these rocks drops, you'll see that each of them have a chance to drop a geode, coal, or their material for that floor. If you get a coal drop from any of these rocks, it increases the amount of experience you get by 5. So, for example, the rocks in the mines will go from 0 experience to 5 experience. Skull Cavern and Volcano rocks will go from 1 experience to 6.
And the rocks on your farm, completely different kind of rocks from these. They'll always give you 1 experience and then give you 6 with coal. Also, regular rocks have the most amount of dropped items in the game, so much that I couldn't really show them all. What you see on this list are the very common drops. However, any rock in the mines has a very small chance to drop Omni Geodes. And even though they commonly drop their ore associated with that set of floors, they also have a small chance of dropping ore from other floors. And when it comes to the Skull Cavern rocks, they have a chance of dropping any of the previous types of ores and any of the previous types of geodes. Surprisingly though, this isn't true for volcano rocks. They can straight up only drop stone and coal. Moving on to the next set of stones, we have our ores. Copper, iron, gold, iridium, and the extremely late game radioactive ore. Now, copper ore nodes are commonly found on floors 1 to 40 in the mines. Iron nodes are commonly found 40 to 80, and gold nodes found from floors 80 to 120. You do still have a low chance of finding previous floors nodes in a later floor though, so you could be in the ice caverns 40 to 80 and still find copper nodes. They're just not as common. And same goes for iron and copper in the magma floors. Iridium nodes only start to show up once you get to the Skull Cavern, which is the second dungeon of the game. We'll go over it later. The Skull Cavern also has the possibility of spawning any of the previous ore nodes. Now, the radioactive node is something that's a little special. So special that it's a bit of a spoiler, and we'll talk about it later. Talking about this group as a whole, you'll notice that iridium nodes are one of the best rocks to break if you're gunning for level 10 mining, since it gives a whopping 50 experience every time you break it. Comparatively, radioactive nodes surprisingly only give you 18. And I'm pretty sure I'm the first person on Earth to do this.
It takes 25 hits with the regular pickaxe to break a radioactive node, and that gets halved all the way down to 13 hits with a copper pickaxe. Moving on, we have 3 types of gem nodes. I did group up all of the regular gems into one spot since there's 6 of them and they would make this guide a lot messier, but they're all pretty simple. So just so you know, amethyst and topaz can be found on any floor of the mines. Jade and aquamarine can only be found starting from floor 40, and rubies and emeralds can only be found starting from floor 80. And those floors are what determine how much experience they give. Each gem node just gives their gem, and they all take the same amount of hits, starting at 5 with the regular pickaxe. The diamond node is special because it is a diamond, the most valuable of all of the minerals, and it gives the highest amount of experience in the game at 150. So absolutely gun for these even if you don't want the diamond. And it takes 10 hits to break initially. They can be found on floors 50 or higher in the mines, although they are much rarer than any other gem node. Although funny enough, it is the only regular gem that can spawn on floors of multiple of 5, I can only assume from an oversight.
This purple stone that you see next is simply called a gem node, and it randomly gives you one of the 6 common gems. Thing is, it still gives you the experience of whatever gem comes out. The only difference between it and the other gem nodes is the fact that it can be found on any floor, so you could theoretically get a ruby on floor 6 of the mines. And it only takes 4 hits initially as opposed to 5. And it can also be found on any floor of the Skull Cavern. So moving on from here, once again this is going to be about Ginger Island stuff, so if you don't want too many spoilers, I'd skip the rest of the rocks guide. So first we have mussel nodes. These spawn on the beach on the west side of Ginger Island, and as expected, they give you mussels. Each one you break also has a chance of having a golden walnut until you've gotten 5 golden walnuts from the mussels altogether. Not really much more to say about those other than they take a surprising amount of hits for, you know, just a mussel. Bone nodes can be found on the dig site. There's 2 different colors of these bone nodes, but they both act the same. As the name implies, these give bones, and I've just written bones there because it gives so many different kinds of items that it'd be impossible to put in that small little square. On to the last node, the clay node. This is possibly the least notable of them all. It also spawns on the dig site, and it just gives you clay. Yes, the same clay that you can hoe up out of the ground anywhere. The next 2 rocks we have are exclusive to the volcano dungeon. First we have cinder shard nodes, which of course give you cinder shards. These will be used as a form of currency up at the forge, which if you want to know more about that, I have a whole separate guide about it. Can also be traded for a couple of items at the dwarf shop in the middle of the volcano dungeon, and are used for 1 crafting recipe. I would also be amiss if I didn't mention that it does make one of the best hats in the game. Next up we have an Omni Geode node, which is the only geode node that naturally spawns in the game without the use of a specific farm. It's really rare and gives you the 2nd most experience out of all the rocks in the game. As you could probably guess, when you break it open, it gives you a couple of Omni Geodes, which we've gone over before. So that covers all of the rocks, and I know what you're thinking. God, I wish there were more rocks. Lucky for you, there's some that I didn't include. First, there's the boulders, which no matter where you break them on your farm, in the caves, anywhere, give you no experience, but they'll always give you 10 stone. Although for the ones on your farm, you will need the steel pickaxe minimum to be able to break them. Then we have all of the geode nodes, excluding the Omni Geode one. These can only be found on the little mining patches of the Hilltop Farm and the Four Corners Farm. These will drop whatever geode they're showing. Then you have the Mystic Stone, which was excluded because I couldn't find any. Therefore, I couldn't get any of the data that I needed for how many hits it takes for each pickaxe. But I can tell you that it is the rarest rock in the entire game. Despite that, it only gives 50 experience, but it will always drop 1 to 3 iridium ore, 1 to 4 gold ore, and then have a 25% chance for a prismatic shard. They can only be found on floor 100 or higher of the mines, anywhere in the Skull Cavern, and anywhere in the Volcano Dungeon. And it's the only other rock other than the Diamond Node that can be found on floors that are a multiple of 5 in the mines. And that should do it. So many rocks, and now you know all of them.
Yeah, I forget the next couple lines, but then it goes, Secret tunnel! Secret tunnel!
So before we go into the mines themselves, I want to talk about the quarry first. This is either unlocked from doing the crafts rooms bundle in the community center, or by buying the bridge on the Joja community forum for 25,000 gold. It can contain any rock in the game except for the ones that are exclusive to Ginger Island. The only catch is the rarer stones like the Iridium Ore Node or the Mystic Stone are incredibly rare. Once you start clearing the quarry, more rocks will start to respawn in the spaces that you've left empty. So it's recommended that you clear it entirely so that they have the highest chance to respawn. You can probably get by on checking it like every 2 weeks or so. The quarry also has its own little cave. This is known as the Quarry Mine. It is simply one floor filled with haunted skulls, copper slimes, and iron slimes. And it can also contain copper and iron ore nodes. The main reason you'll want to come here is for the golden scythe at the end of it, which does have a slight advantage over the regular scythe. It's like 0.1 of a pixel longer, and it more reliably cuts grass in the area that it does cover. It can be worth coming back here though, because the haunted skulls are exclusive to this type of floor. They have the ability to drop a couple of rare things, like some bone-related artifacts, magic rock candy, and artifact troves. Which, you know, first of all, I don't know why they drop skeletal hands. They literally have no hands, but whatever. With that, it's time to move on to the mines. The Mines is a 120 floor dungeon unlocked on day 5 that's split into 6 different biomes. Each different biome has different enemies, forageables, gems, and aesthetics. As you go deeper into the mines, you'll unlock a checkpoint through the elevator every 5 floors, and from then on you'll be able to head straight to any of the checkpoints that you've unlocked. The deal with the mines is every time you enter, it'll be completely randomized. This is only if you leave the mines. If you're on floor 20 and take the elevator to floor 5 and then back down to floor 20 again, it'll still be the same floor 20 as before. So you enter the mines and you're on your first floor. To move on to the next one, you need to find a ladder. Different things that you do on the floor have different chances of dropping a ladder. For instance, killing a monster has a 15% chance of dropping it. Destroying a rock has a 2% chance to spawn a ladder, unless there's no enemies on the floor, where there's then a 6% chance for a rock to drop a ladder. That is theoretically. Like most things in the game, randomization is a bit more complicated than there's just a % chance for it to happen. For instance, the numbers I gave you are heavily affected by daily luck, to the point where a good luck day can give you more than a double chance to drop ladders from any source, and a bad luck day can more than half that chance. In addition, the more rocks you destroy, the better of a chance you have to get a ladder from the next rock. There's even ways to predict where a ladder will spawn, but that's well beyond what I want to go over here. You'll also occasionally find these crates and barrels sitting around certain floors. You want to break these open as much as you can. They can't contain ladders, but they do have a whole 2-mile long spreadsheet of items that it can possibly drop. And now that you know the basics, let's go over all of the different biomes. For the first 10 floors, you'll have the brown earth mines. And before we go on, I'll point out in the top left that I have panels that show you what enemies can be found, what forageables can be found, this also includes gem nodes, and what ores are available here. So, these first 10 floors are pretty generic, pretty much only good for finding copper. Some notable drops from the monsters that can be found here are cherry bombs from the Duggies and a crab from the rock crabs, and you'll get leather boots from a chest on floor 10. Floors 11 through 29 are weed floors. Here you'll find lots of bugs for grinding bug meat, which can be turned into bait. Fiber will also spawn in good amounts, making this a good place to grind for it. You'll find your first weapon upgrade on floor 20, the steel smallsword, and this is also the first of the 3 underground lakes that you can fish in. Floors 31 to 39 are shadow floors. Here there will be low light along with bats and stone golems. I don't really find myself coming back to these floors much, although the stone golems do have a 10% chance to drop coal. On floor 40, you'll find the slingshot, which can be loaded with various ammos, notably the explosive ammo once you reach level 9 combat, which is great for mining. Floors 41 to 69 are the ice mines. Here you'll finally start finding iron ore, along with a bunch of new mine forageables like frozen tears. The dust sprites that are found here can be a very good source of coal, since they usually spawn in large numbers. On floor 50, you'll get the tundra boots, and from floor 50 and deeper, you can now find the diamond nodes. The chance starts at 1 in 500 stones being a node, and that increases every floor you go down. And as I said before, it's one of the only gem nodes that can be found on checkpoint floors. On floor 60, you obtain your first guaranteed dagger, the Crystal Dagger, alongside having the second underground lake, and on floor 70, you obtain the Master Slingshot. It's identical to the regular slingshot, just with twice the damage. Don't lose this one, it's the best in the game. Floors 71 to 79 are the Frozen Castle floors. These are similar to the Frozen Earth floors, but now they're skeletons. They have a chance of dropping a decent weapon, the Bone Sword, as well as bunches of bone fragments. Floor 80 has the Firewalker boots, and all around +3 to both defense and immunity. Floors 81 to 109 are the lava floors. These are the first floors that you can find gold ore, emeralds, and rubies. The geodes of these floors are now magma geodes, and in addition to quartz, you can now also find fire quartz. To top all of it off, weeds can also be found on these floors, making it another good spot to farm for them. As for interesting drops, the shadow enemies have a chance to drop full resource bars, and the rarer the material, the lower the chance. Lava crabs can drop bombs, and squid kids are one of the only sources of squid ink if you don't want to throw squids in a fish pond. On floor 90, you'll obtain the obsidian edge, which is your last and best guaranteed weapon. For any better ones, you'll have to buy them from the shop, find them through luck, or solve certain puzzles. On floor 100, you get a star drop, which increases your energy permanently, and you also have the last of the underground lakes. And from floor 101 on, you can now find Mystic Stones, which, just in case you skipped the rock section, contain gold and iridium ore and have a high 25% chance to hold a prismatic shard. At floor 110, you'll get the Space Boots, which is a +4 to both defense and immunity. And for the last 10 floors, it's the same lava caves as before, just without weeds and a better chance for magma geodes. On the final floor, you'll find the Skeleton Key. This has two uses. It opens up the Skull Cavern, which we'll go over shortly, and it also allows you to play Junimo Kart in the saloon. Yay! Also, small little side effect of hitting the bottom of the mines, all enemies now have a 0.05% chance to drop a diamond or prismatic shard. While that's generally all of the biomes covered now, there are a couple of special floors that have a random chance of replacing whatever floor you're on. First, we have infested floors, no rocks spawn here, just enemies, and you'll have to defeat them all if you want to move on. If you have the Oil of Garlic buff, which is a drinkable crafted item unlocked at combat level 6, this type of floor won't spawn at all, and you can still skip it if you have a staircase. Next, you could have a mushroom floor. These can only spawn on floor 81 or later. Here you'll find a bunch of red and purple mushrooms, and once you leave, it will never spawn again that day. Last, you have dungeon floors, which are very similar to the quarry mines, which means haunted skulls. These can spawn on any floor, which is not good because it can be really punishing if you don't have a strong enough weapon to deal with the haunted skulls or slimes. And as a rule, none of those special floors will ever spawn on a floor that has an elevator. And before we move on to the Skull Cavern, we still have to talk about the remixed rewards in the mines. This is a setting that you can check whenever you start your file, and all it does is changes what items you'll get in all of the chests found in the mines. The reward in 3 of the chests will not change. The Slingshot, Master Slingshot, and Star Drop will all still spawn in the regular spot. For all of the other chests, however, there's a variety of boots, weapons, or rings that you could get instead of the regular item. And some of the items you can randomly get are way better than what you would get normally. Like floor 20 has a chance to give you either a glow ring or a magnet ring, both of which are very useful items. Some of the weapons you can find are just outright better than the default weapons. And if you're worried, you don't have to worry about never getting a weapon upgrade because you do still have a guaranteed weapon on floor 60 and floor 90. It's just that the weapon itself is randomized. For the Skull Cavern, you've got 2 things stopping you. First, the aforementioned skeleton key from the bottom of the mines. Second, you need to complete the vault bundle, after which the bus will be unlocked to access the desert. You'll find the skeleton cavern in the top left corner. Structurally, it's very similar to the mines. Break rocks and defeat enemies to get deeper. However, this time, there's no checkpoints and the entire dungeon is one biome, plus a couple of special rooms. You also now have 2 different ways of getting deeper, through the regular staircase that we all know and love, or through a shaft. Anytime a ladder would spawn, there's a 20% chance that it'll be a shaft. Shafts can send you down anywhere from 3 to 15 floors at once, at the expense of a little bit of health. The damage will never outright knock you out, but it's something to be careful for. The main reason you're going to want to come to the Skull Cavern is for Iridium Ore. Not only does it act as your last upgrade for your tools, but it's needed in a lot of the best crafting recipes, such as Iridium Sprinklers, Crystallariums, and Iridium Bands. As you get deeper in the Skull Cavern, the frequency of Iridium Ore nodes will increase. I'd say you'd want to be around floor 40 before you start getting a good amount of them. Almost every enemy here has a very useful drop, and most of them are kinds that you've seen before in the mines. Serpents are the standout enemy, providing both bombs and spicy eels, a food that has a speed and a luck buff. Purple slimes, iridium bats, and iridium crabs all have a chance to drop iridium ore themselves. Carbon ghosts drop a guaranteed Omni Geode, and mummies can drop the famed red cabbage seed, an important drop to pay attention to if you're trying to complete the community center in 1 year. As for your special rooms, you have prehistoric floors. These can contain fiddlehead ferns, which are usually locked to the secret woods in summer, and a ton of dinosaur enemies. These are great sources of several bone pieces you'll need for the museum, and are one of the only sources of dinosaur eggs, which can be incubated in a coop to hatch your own little dinosaur. After floor 10, you might find a treasure room. These are small freebie floors where you can find some of the best items in the game, such as crystallariums, iridium bars, or if you're really lucky, an auto petter, which will prevent your animals from passively losing friendship. The only other way to get this item is from Jojamart after paying off the Joja membership form. The last type of room doesn't have any official name, but I like to call them pyramid rooms. It has a sort of a golden brick theme, and you'll find lots of more mummies and carbon ghosts than usual here. For a couple of tips for going deeper, I'll say that you'll need 3 things to succeed: bombs, food, and food buffs. Having different sizes of bombs, including explosive ammo, will blow up rocks a lot quicker, saving you a lot of time, as well as energy over swinging the pickaxe. Food is a must-have due to the strong enemies here. Almost everyone has memories of walking onto floor 1, getting swarmed by serpents, and dying in 3 hits. Personally, I'm a fan of salad if you like to buy your food, or cheese if you want to make it yourself. And food buffs are even more important here than anywhere else. First, they actually last longer due to time being slightly slowed down while you're in the Skull Cavern. Second, luck and speed buffs are just incredible for mining. If you want a more in-depth guide on strategies you could use for getting deeper in the Skull Cavern, I made a whole video for a guide. It's one of my favorites.
Oh, and you may be wondering, what can I find in the Skull Cavern other than iridium?
Everything.
If it can be found in the mines, it can be found in here.
The last area we'll be going over is... big spoilers. Once again, I'd skip the rest of the section if you don't want to see it. We're talking about the volcano dungeon on Ginger Island. This one will be pretty brief, because just like with the Skull Cavern, there's just one biome. Progression through these floors are a bit different. You'll generally spawn near the bottom of the floor, and you need to find the doorway, normally near the top of the floor, to move on. Sometimes the doorway will be closed, in which you'll have to find buttons on the floor to open it up. There's only 10 floors, and once again, unlike the other 2 dungeons, these floors only randomize once per day. If you leave and come back, you'll find the same floors as before. Floor 5 will always have the dwarf shop, along with a shortcut that you can unlock for 5 golden walnuts back to the beginning of the dungeon. Speaking of this shortcut, you'll want to pay extra attention to your time here, because you can't just go up a ladder and immediately be at the entrance. If you want to leave before reaching the end, you'll have to walk back through every floor you've already been through, and this shortcut could save you from passing out. If you do reach the end, there's another shortcut there to go back to the beginning. In the volcano, you can find copper, iron, gold, and iridium ore nodes, cinder shard nodes, which give you cinder shards used at the forge, and omni geode nodes, which give you omni geodes. Lastly, you can find diamond, ruby, and mystic nodes, all of which we've gone over before. Now, I do want to say, there's one of the weirdest things in the entire game here, and that's the copper and iron nodes. Not any normal copper and iron nodes though, these are different from the other ones. For some reason, they're the exact same as the ones found in the mines of the Skull Cavern, but they only take 1 hit to break, and also they've been recolored to more match the volcano dungeon. They only take 1 hit, no matter what pickaxe you're using. This does not carry over to the gold or iridium ores for some reason, just the copper and iron. There are 2 forageables in these mines, magma caps, which are a fairly common spawn that heal a lot when eaten and sell for 400 gold at base. Their main use is to trade for pineapple seeds with the island trader. The second forageable is a dragon tooth. These are much rarer, only spawning near giant skeletons, which aren't even guaranteed to show up at all. These can be traded for banana trees at the island trader, and are needed to craft island warp totems. You're better off hunting the lava lurks for these, since they'll drop them 15% of the time. Also, while the layouts of all the floors are randomized, floor 9 will always be a weird kind of mechanical maze type floor. Often through this floor you'll just have to take hits and eat food to get through it. Enemies will always be in your way. Speaking of enemies, here's some of their notable drops. Dwarvish sentries can drop every type of gem. False magma caps drop magma caps 99% of the time. Also, you can tell it's a false magma cap if your cursor doesn't change when you hover over it. Hotheads have 2 separate 10% chances to drop pineapple seeds. Magma sprites and sparkers have 2 separate chances to drop cinder shards. Magma duggies can drop mega bombs and taro tubers, and tiger slimes can drop pineapple seeds or mango saplings, but much more importantly, the tiger hat. You'll also occasionally find chests sitting around. Common chests have a chance to give you various Ginger Island items and the dwarf weapons, which are great defensively. If you're really lucky, you'll find a rare chest, which has an orange stripe on top. These also drop a couple of Ginger Island items, a unique hat, and is the only source of ostrich eggs if you lost the freebie egg you get from a journal scrap. And these will give you the dragon tooth weapons, which are second only to the upgraded galaxy weapons. Finally, you can find 17 of the 130 gold walnuts here, 5 from rocks, 5 from enemies, 5 from crates, and then 1 from each type of chest. So after all of that, technically, there's 2 more dungeons. However, they're extremely endgame content. They're basically reskinned versions of the mines and the skull caverns and are much harder than their original variants. They're unlocked after taking certain endgame challenges from a certain endgame character. If you want to know more about them, I do have a video that goes over them in depth. The most important thing to talk about is there's one exclusive item to these dungeons, and that's radioactive ore nodes. This isn't necessarily the next step past iridium ore, although it can be put into a furnace to make a radioactive bar. They're just used for crafting recipes though, there's not radioactive tools or anything. Finally, we've covered all of our bases. There's a lot of mining content in the game, arguably more than farming. So now we can finally start talking about the mining skill and what rewards you get for leveling it up. At level 1, you get the cherry bomb crafting recipe, which takes 4 copper ore and 1 coal. At level 2, you get the staircase crafting recipe, which some would argue is very important. However, it takes 99 stone to craft, and honestly, trading 1 jade for a staircase on Sundays from the desert trader is a lot more efficient. Level 3, you get the cooking recipe for Miner's Treat. It takes a cave carrot, 1 sugar, and 1 milk, and gives you a +3 mining buff and a +32 magnetism buff. I want to talk about the mining buff really quickly. It's not actually a great buff. All it does is lower the amount of energy you use when swinging a pickaxe, and it slightly increases your chance of finding gem nodes. When mining seriously, you'll probably want luck and speed buffs more than that. It also gives a magnetism buff though, which is okay. It's not going to be too noticeable as long as you have a magnet ring. At level 4, you get the crafting recipe for the glowstone ring, which is one of the best rings in the game. It combines the effect of the light ring and the magnet ring for 5 solar essence and 5 iron bars, which sounds expensive, but trust me, it's worth it. And you get your first transmute crafting recipe. This allows you to make an iron bar out of 3 copper bars. Funny thing is, I feel like this isn't used too much because I find myself lacking copper bars more often than iron bars. I don't know, that's just me, but the option's there now. At level 5, you have your first profession choice between miner, which gives you 1 extra ore per vein you break, or geologist, which makes gem nodes have a 50% chance of dropping an extra gem. I've gotta be honest, this is one of the most lopsided choices in the entire game. Ores are so important. A profession that increases the amount of ore you get is fantastic fantastically useful. And even though it sounds like Geologist gives you an opportunity for more money, because you'll be able to sell more gems, it's not necessarily the case, because for the level 10 professions, there's a really good money maker on the miner side. I would say Geologist might be better if you're looking for more gifts for people in the form of gems. Moving on to level 6, you get the Bomb recipe, which, like the Cherry Bomb, just takes 4 iron ore and 1 coal. At level 7, you get the second Transmute crafting recipe, which allows you to turn 2 iron bars into 1 gold bar, which again has its uses if you need a lot of gold bars for some reason. Also, if you were intending on selling the 2 iron bars, you'll get 10 more gold if you turn it into a gold bar, so, you know, stacks on stacks and all that. Level 8, you get the Mega Bomb, crafted with 4 gold ore, 1 solar essence, and 1 void essence. Which, while it sounds like a very specific recipe, you probably have solar essence and void essence anyway because they're not used for much else, so it's not that bad of a recipe. At level 9, you get the beautiful Crystallarium recipe. One of the best in the game, fantastic moneymaker. It is a bit expensive with 99 stone, 5 gold bars, 2 iridium bars, and 1 battery pack, but it pays for itself eventually. I like to have just a group of these making whatever gems I need. Super useful, can't recommend it enough. And then our level 10 professions. So starting with miner, first we have blacksmith, which makes all metal bars worth 50% more, which doesn't sound like a lot, until you consider that iridium bars sell for 1,000 gold normally and 1,500 gold with this profession. This single-handedly makes deep skull cavern runs a great moneymaker. And if you're late game enough, this also applies to radioactive bars. It didn't used to, but now it does, increasing the price from 3,000 gold to 4,500 gold. And radioactive ore isn't that bad to grind for because you can just continuously enter floor 1 of the dangerous mines over and over again until it spawns for you. It's that easy. Absolutely nutty moneymaker. And the other one, prospector, chance to find coal doubled. I don't know if anyone cares about that, especially at the point where you're at level 10 mining. You have charcoal machines, you have money to buy coal if you really need it. You've been around the block. I suppose if you're really hurting for coal for some reason, it's there for you. On the other end, with the geologist profession, we have excavator, which doubles your chance of finding geodes. And for clarification, this applies to normal, frozen, magma, and omni geodes. It does not apply to treasure troves or golden coconuts. Now, to be fair, if you haven't completed your museum at this point, this isn't an awful thing. This applies to many parts of the game, such as fishing up treasure chests that could have geodes, breaking open rocks that could have geodes, panning could have an omni geode, hoeing an artifact spot can have geodes. All of those chances are doubled and should make completing the museum a lot easier if you're struggling with it. And on the other hand, we have Gemologist, which makes gems worth 30% more. Now, I'm not going to act like this is completely inferior to the blacksmith profession, since if you do have like a ton of crystallariums making yourself a ton of diamonds, this is good. It changes the 750 gold sale price of diamonds up to 975, which is nothing to sneeze at. It's also probably the way to go if you just straight up don't like mining. For the most part though, if you're a miner, it's blacksmith.
Daring quests into endless dungeons, slaying dragons with enchanted swords from space, we can only be talking about one game, Stardew Valley. Welcome to the final guide in the series where we go over all of the skills. In the previous guide for mining, I mentioned that even though they seem similar, there's plenty of things to talk about that are specific to only combat. And that is true. Today we'll be going over combat mechanics, all of the different weapons and where to get them, rings, and finally, the rewards you get for leveling up. So combat. It follows the rules of most video games. Hit bad guy, make their HP go to 0, and don't let your own HP go to 0. If you do, you'll be treated to a rougher penalty than if you were to pass out from running out of energy or staying up too late. That penalty is 10% of your gold up to 1,000 and moving on to the next day. The penalty for running out of HP is 5% of your gold, but it's up to 5,000. In addition to losing some of the items in your inventory, you can lose absolutely anything that isn't a tool. Yes, including all of your weapons. Yes, including all of that cheese you stockpiled, even including the infinity weapons, which take hours of work to make. Well, until version 1.6, infinity weapons will be safe then. To get any of these lost items back, you'll have to unlock the Adventurers Guild by killing 10 slimes starting from the day after you enter the mines. Go and see Marlin at the front desk, and you'll have the option to use the item recovery service to get one item back. Choose wisely though, because you'll have to pay a fee equal to the amount of money that you'd get if you sold that stack of items. So usually the best things to recover are food, weapons, or bombs. Things that you use, not sell. Once you pay, you'll get that item in the mail the next day, but all of the other items will be permanently lost. Speaking of the Adventurers Guild, this is your one-stop shop for anything combat related. Marlin tends to the shop where you can buy all kinds of weapons, boots, or rings. As you get deeper in the mines, the shop will be updated with stronger items. An important thing to know, nothing here will ever be the best possible item you can get, whether it's weapons or boots or even rings. But oftentimes it's better than what you're guaranteed to get elsewhere. Also, this is the only place that you can sell any weapons, boots, or rings. You're not even allowed to ship them otherwise. Over on the right, you have Gil tending to the Slayer rewards. Once you unlock the Adventurers Guild, the game will start tracking how many of each enemy type you've defeated. And once you reach a certain threshold, you can get a reward. Every reward is unique and can only be obtained from the Slayer task. And if you ever lose any of them, you can buy it again from the store. Many of the quests aren't restricted to a single specific enemy, and the rewards range from weapons, rings, and hats. That is to say, some of the rewards are great, like the burglar ring, but others are nearly useless. You do need to complete all of them if you want to achieve perfection though. Next, let's talk about stats. Each weapon has specific stats that differentiate it from other weapons. These stats are damage, which is pretty self-explanatory, crit power, which determines how much more damage a critical hit will do. The formula is base damage times 3 plus crit power divided by 50. Simple. So say your weapon, like most, has no crit power modifier, the critical hit will just do 3 times the damage. If you have, for instance, the Lava Katana with a crit power of 25, critical hits will deal 3.5 times damage. How do you get a critical hit? Well, that's determined by your crit chance stat. It's a bit more complicated than damage. Most weapons have a base crit rate around 2%, daggers usually have a little bit extra on top of that, and each point of additional crit chance amounts to a little less than a 2% increase. This chance can also be increased through foraging, gear, and luck buffs, all of which we'll go over later. Next we have defense. Pretty simple. Each point of defense reduces the amount of damage you would take by 1 point. Immunity lowers your chance of getting inflicted by a debuff by 10% for each point. If the immunity buff is higher than the chance of the debuff, you're effectively immune to that debuff. The weight of the weapon affects how far the enemy will get knocked back when hit, and weapon speed, not to be confused with movement speed, is how long swinging the weapon will take. Clubs by default will have a slower swing speed than swords. For reference, for a sword to be as slow as a club, it would need a -8 speed stat. Each point of speed makes a 40 millisecond difference. Also, while movement speed and weapon speed are two different things, any movement speed buffs you get from coffee or something will also be applied to your weapon speed. There's several ways to raise these stats outside of what weapon you're holding, through means like rings or food buffs. Or if you're in the late game, you can go to the forge. Normally, the forge can enchant tools to give them a special effect, but for weapons, you'll be able to forge them 3 times, and you can increase the stat of your choice by using a specific gem on your forge. The weird thing is, each of these forge upgrades don't necessarily equate to 1 point in the stat. For instance, forging crit chance increases the chance by 4.6%, which is much more than a normal point of crit chance. And forging weapon speed equates to 2 points each time, and 3 points if you do it a 3rd time. Forging a weapon will cost 10 cinder shards during the first forge, 15 during the second, and 20 for the 3rd forge. However, if you use a diamond, you'll only need to forge once, only costing 10 cinder shards, but you'll get 3 random stats. On top of all of that, you can enchant the weapons just like you do the tools. And there's 5 different enchantments. Artful, which gives you a 50% cooldown on special moves. Bug Killers doubles damage to bugs, as well as allowing you to kill the armored bugs in the Skull Cavern. It's not worth it, they don't have a great drop table. Crusader allows you to do 50% more damage to mummies, ghosts, skeletons, and void spirits, as well as knocking mummies out without needing a bomb. Vampiric gives you a 9% chance to regain some health on a kill, and the amount you heal will be about 10% of the monster's health. And Haymaker, which is the only non-combat related one, can allow you to get fiber when cutting grass alongside extra hay. Now, before I talk about any weapons specifically, it's important to know about the 3 different weapon types: swords, daggers, and clubs. Swords and clubs are somewhat similar due to swinging the same, but daggers have a stabbing motion, making it harder and more risky to land hits. Each type of weapon also has a special attack. Swords block from every direction, clubs will slam the ground, damaging all enemies around it, and daggers will lock any enemies in place and hit them 4 times quickly. So for the most part, clubs are considered to be the best weapon type, mostly because they naturally have a higher damage stat than the other weapons, but also because there's a bit of an exploit with the special attack. By default, the club special attack is bound to right click. If you left click during the special attack, it'll hit an extra time, and you can do this as much as you can fit into the special attack. This makes the damage potential almost endless. So now we'll be going over every weapon, its stats, where it can be found, and if it's special in any way. I'll be going in order of the earliest you can find a weapon to the latest. First, the beautiful rusty sword. This is given to you upon your first time entering the mines. Your goal is pretty much to replace this as soon as you can. And the wooden blade is the first weapon you can buy from the shop. I don't really recommend it, as it's outclassed by a weapon you're guaranteed to obtain on floor 20 of the mines. So, it may feel like we skipped around, but the Neptune's Glaive is available as soon as you're able to fish. It has a low chance of being in any treasure chests you get, and if you obtain it early, it'll be your best possible option for a long time. Not to mention, it's free, when a lot of weapons in the shop are very expensive. The Broken Trident is the other weapon available in treasure chests. It's still incredibly powerful, just like the Neptune's Glaive, comparable to daggers you would unlock around floor 80 of the mines. Next, we have 2 weapons that are available on floors 1 to 19 of the mines that are in the special items category. These are items that can be dropped either from crates found in the mines or by special slimes, which you'll know because they have a star on their head. These special items are usually really good compared to other weapons found at this point. So from now on, you know what I mean when I call something a special item. These first 2 special items are the carving knife, which is the weakest of all daggers, probably only better than the rusty sword, and the wooden club. While it's the weakest of all generally available clubs at this point, it's still very powerful. Clubs are usually only unlocked later in the game. This is the only club available until floor 40. It one-shots most enemies found on these early floors. The Iron Dirk becomes viable at the Adventurers Guild after reaching floor 15 in the mines. It's alright, but it's super expensive for this early in the game. The Steel Small Sword is your first guaranteed upgrade obtained from a chest on floor 20 of the mines, unless you randomize the mine chest in the settings, that is. It's only a little stronger than the Rusty Sword damage-wise, but it comes with a nice +2 speed. The Silver Saber becomes viable after reaching floor 20. It's alright. It might be the first weapon worth buying from the shop since it comes with a defense boost, and you won't get any more guaranteed swords from the mines for a while. The Force Sword is a special item drop on floors 20 to 59. This is another big win if you manage to get it early. A speed and defense buff combo is rare, plus it's slightly stronger than anything you can buy at this point. And the Windspire is a dagger that replaces the carving knife as a special item from floors 20 to 39. Daggers just still aren't that good, especially when this is still able to hit 1s for damage. The Cutlass becomes viable after reaching floor 25. It's barely better than the Silver Saber, and it's twice the price. Pass. And the Pirate Sword, viable after reaching floor 30. Weaker than the Silver Saber, but 100 gold more expensive, with a speed buff. Another pass. So I'm putting this next one here because it could plausibly be unlocked depending on how much time you spend on these early floors of the mines. The Insect Head is the reward for killing 125 bugs. Honestly, it's a pretty good weapon. Bugs are one of the most common enemies, and 125 is one of the lower counts for the Slayer goals, so it might be worth grinding out for an early advantage. The Wood Mallet is viable after reaching floor 40 of the mines. It's the first club that you can grab for sure, but at 2,000 gold, it's a pretty hard sell. The Iron Edge is a special item on floors 40 to 59. It's got a weight of +3, and honestly, I think it's worse for it. You're going to encounter a lot of bats and ghosts on these floors, and it can become really annoying to kill when they're knocked back a mile each hit. The Lead Rod is a special item on floors 40 to 79, and it's probably your best bet for a club at this point, but that -4 speed is gonna hurt. As a reminder, that's like having a -12 speed for a sword. Luckily, it can 1 and 2 shot a lot of the upcoming enemies. The Claymore is viable after reaching floor 45. It's as expensive as a wooden mallet, but it's a little bit faster and does more damage. The weight still kinda hurts though. This one's a favorite. I didn't know about this weapon until I did this. The Templar's Blade, viable after reaching floor 55 for 4,000 gold. First of all, no. And to sweeten the deal, it is the only weapon in the entire game that has no chance to crit by default. The only one. We hate the Templar's Blade. Absolute dog water of a weapon. Shawnee agrees. The Crystal Dagger is your first guaranteed weapon since the Steel Smallsword. It's a chest on floor 60. I'll be honest, it's not that much better. There's like a dozen weapons we've gone over so far that are better than it, including the Broken Trident Dagger that's been available since you first got a fishing rod. Only use it if you have to. The Shadow Dagger is a special item on floors 60 to 79. Would you believe that it does over double the damage that the Crystal Dagger does? Because it does. This is actually a pretty decent drop. The Bone Sword becomes viable once you reach floor 75, but it's also a fairly common drop from skeletons at 4%, which start appearing on floor 71. It would be a pretty good weapon, but it's outclassed by a guaranteed weapon coming up soon. With floor 80 comes 4 new special weapons. The worst of which being the Burglar's Shank. It is literally weaker than the Shadow Dagger found on earlier floors. What were they thinking? The Slammer is as good as it gets when it comes to clubs for the mines, which is not saying much. Its damage is around a lot of the swords you can find around here, which isn't what you want when you're working with a slower weapon. The Yeti Tooth is the first weapon that I would say passes the Neptune's Glaive that we could get all that time ago. It comes with a fantastic +4 defense, which makes up for it being slightly weaker than the upcoming guaranteed weapon. The Tempered Broadsword, on the other hand, I mean, what's not to love? I'll tell you what, all of it. Slow, heavy, and weaker than our guaranteed weapon. Speaking of, the Obsidian Edge. It's an outright decent weapon found in a chest on floor 90. If you don't get any lucky drops or buy anything, this is as good as it gets. The Steel Falchion is viable after reaching floor 90. It's slightly stronger than the Obsidian Edge, but you're gonna love that +4 speed. Unfortunately, the price isn't doing it any favors. Thing is, the Obsidian Edge works just fine for the rest of the mines, so this isn't overly necessary. It's also available as a special item on floor 100 or later, and I'd say it's the best special item drop in the entire mines. Unlike the Cudgel, which is also a special item at floor 100 or lower. Straight up, it is not as good as the Slammer that was available earlier. And that brings us to the final weapon of the mines, the Lava Katana. It's viable after reaching the bottom, and it costs a fat 25,000. I'll try to justify that price to you the best I can. First, it is outright the strongest weapon in this point in the game. You're taking on the Skull Cavern next, and it's going to be rough with anything weaker than this. It's also got that tasty +3 defense to help you take a few more hits. However, all of that does not matter if you're lucky enough to find a prismatic shard, because the Galaxy Sword is kind of the premier weapon of the whole game. Technically, you can unlock it a while ago, but that requires a few things. Number 1, you unlocked the desert either by completing the Vault Bundle or paying it off on the Joja membership board. And 2, you found a prismatic shard, one of the rarest items in the game. If you bring that prismatic shard to the middle of these 3 pillars in the desert, you'll be given the Galaxy Sword for free. Even though the Lava Katana was the best weapon so far, this wipes the floor with it. It's stronger and with a +4 speed boost to attack quickly. With this, you're set for the rest of the game. Not that there aren't better weapons. Upon obtaining the Galaxy Sword, you unlock 2 other weapons in the Adventurers Guild. The Galaxy Dagger, which I'm gonna be honest, meh. I'm not sure if you want to pay 35,000 gold for a weapon that's worse than what you already have. And the Galaxy Hammer. This, on the other hand, can be turned into arguably the best weapon in the entire game. It's got a hefty price tag of 75,000 gold for a reason. I'd recommend just using the Galaxy Sword until you get to a point where 75,000 gold doesn't feel like a lot. Now, moving on to our next section, we have weapons found in the Skull Cavern. First of all, the Wicked Kriss. This is a special item in all of the Skull Cavern. It's definitely there. It's arguably worse than the Obsidian Edge. Who's arguing that? Me. That's it. From here on out, we're going to be talking about weapons found in the post-game area of version 1.5, so if you don't want spoilers, skip over to the rings. Okay, the weapons from Ginger Island essentially come in sets. The first is the Dwarf set. These weapons are all about defending. They're found in common chests in the Volcano Dungeon, which are the ones without that orange stripe. For damage, they're all comparable to the Galaxy weapons, but they all come with large defense and weight stats. As far as all your Ginger Island weapons go, none of them are going to be outright bad, but this is the worst of them. Next, we have the Dragon Tooth weapons. These come from the rare chests in the Volcano Dungeon. These are nearly the most powerful weapons in the game, high damage and high crit chances. One thing to note though, crit chance and power aren't quite as good for clubs, since the special attack can't get a critical hit. But they all overpower the Galaxy weapons, so you can't go wrong. Now we do have one outlier here, the Iridium Needle. For this one, you're going to have to enter the 100 Golden Walnut door and take the challenge that changes the mines into the dangerous mines. In that situation only, the Iridium Needle is a special item dropped from the dangerous version of Special Slimes. Now it may not be the indisputable best weapon, but it is my favorite. So its damage is 20 to 35, nothing special, weaker than the Galaxy Dagger. But you might see that it has a +6 crit chance and +200 crit power. This makes it the highest crit chance at 10% and the most powerful crit at ×7 damage. Through foraging, rings, and luck buffs, you can bump that crit rate up to around a 50% chance. Still not quite as strong as what's up next, but it sure is fun. Now our last set of weapons are the Infinity weapons. These are actually forged from the Galaxy weapons, so they have the same price tags as they do. 35,000 for the dagger, 75,000 for the hammer. To forge them, you'll need to obtain 3 Galaxy souls, which have quite a few ways to obtain, all of which include the Walnut Room. First, you could get 40 key gems from various challenges to trade for 1 battle soul. You can trade 10 radioactive bars, the ore of which is only found in the dangerous mines or dangerous skull cavern, and trade that for 1 from the island trader, only available on the last day of seasons. Or after you've defeated 50 of a certain type of dangerous enemy, which is the ones that show up in the dangerous mines and dangerous skull cavern, they can just outright drop. After you've gathered the battle souls and 60 cinder shards, forge them onto your weapon of choice and you will now have one of the most powerful weapons in the game. Plus, they come with a little defense boost. Did you doubt that I was going to talk about all of the weapons? Well, almost all of them are useful at specific points in your journey if you're lucky enough to find them, except for the Templar's Blade. Moving on to the rings section, it'll be a bit shorter since there's not as many rings. As some quick introductory information about rings, you can hold 2 at a time, and they pretty much all have effects that relate to combat, which is why you're seeing it in this guide. So first, we need to talk about the 2 rings upon which society was built. The small glow ring and the small magnet ring. Both can be found in fishing chests, both are a reward for community center bundles, and both can be dropped from crates in the first 40 floors of the mines. Yes, they have small effects, but they're so important. If you've had a farm for multiple years, when's the last time you had to experience 11 PM in the pure darkness? When's the last time you've cut trees or gone through the mines without extra magnetism? It's horrible. While these 2 rings may not be the strongest, they're reliably gotten in most playthroughs and provide very useful effects. Then we have the regular glow and regular magnet rings. These both drop as special items on floors 40 to 80 and basically have double the effect as their small counterparts. Do you want to know something crazy? Not as good as the small ones. I mean, yeah, they're literally better than them, but they're found later and can only be found with luck, and they get quickly outclassed by the upcoming glowstone ring. The glowstone ring is a crafting recipe unlocked relatively early at mining level 4. You'll usually have it by the time you reach the end of the mines. This is simply the glow ring and the magnet ring combined, and it's incredible for it. As previously discussed, there's a ring for each of your combat stats, either sold in the shop or found in fishing chests. They each raise their stat by 10%. Notable is the topaz ring, which does not increase your defense. Instead, it says it increases the weapon precision stat. The more astute among you may notice that I didn't reference such a stat. That is because it doesn't exist, and this ring does nothing. There's a couple of rings that you unlock the crafting recipe for as you level up combat. the Sturdy ring, which cuts debuff times in half, the Warrior ring, which gives you a very low chance to get an attack buff after slaying a monster, equal to 30 points of damage on each hit for 5 seconds. The Ring of Yoba gives you a very small chance to become invincible for a few seconds after being hit. The lower your HP, the higher the chance. You're better off with just a defense buff. And finally, the Iridium Band, easily the best ring in the game. It combines the effect of the Glowstone ring and the Ruby ring, two of which individually are very good. It's a very expensive crafting recipe, but it's worth going for. Next, we have the rings you can get from Slayer tasks. From slaying 1,000 slimes, you get the Slime Charmer ring, making you invincible to slimes. This is a nice quality of life one, especially if you have a slime hutch. Next, the Burglar's ring for slaying 500 dust sprites. Basically, every enemy will now have 2 chances to drop items instead of 1, effectively doubling the items they drop. The Crab Shell ring, obtained from slaying 60 rock crabs, increases your defense by 5. The Napalm ring is obtained from slaying 250 serpents and will make an enemy explode when you kill it, destroying any nearby rocks and hurting other enemies. You will not take damage. The Vampire ring from killing 200 bats restores 2 HP every time you slay a monster. And finally, the Savage ring from 150 Void Spirits gives you a +2 speed boost for 3 seconds after slaying all monsters. Surprisingly handy, you can really feel that boost. Our last set of rings are ones that you'll need to get lucky to find, much like many of the weapons. First, the Immunity Band can be found as a special item on floors 100 plus of the mines, or in the Skull Cavern. It simply increases immunity by 4. The Lucky Ring, another fan favorite, can be dropped as a special item in the Skull Cavern, or more commonly, it can be found while panning. It just gives a +1 to luck, but as we've discussed, it's such a good skill that this is a highly sought after ring. Funny enough, if you're looking for it, you should look during lucky days and give yourself the best luck buff you can. Lastly, we have 4 late game rings that can only be found in the Volcano Dungeon chests. The Hot Java ring adds a 10% drop of coffee and a 7.5% drop of espresso to all enemies, in addition to what they'd normally drop. The Protection ring increases your invincibility time after taking a hit by 0.4 seconds, giving you a total of 1.6 seconds of invincibility, or 2 seconds if you're wearing 2 of them. And finally, the Soul Sapper ring is the energy version of the Vampire ring, giving 4 energy after slaying a monster. Once you reach the forge, on top of the 2 ring slots you normally have, you can combine them. It costs 20 Cinder Shards, and the only limitation is that you can't combine a ring with itself. You can, however, combine 2 different rings with similar effects, such as the Glow ring with the Glowstone ring, or the Ruby ring with the Iridium Band. And if you ever want to use them in a different combination, you can take them apart whenever at no cost. Last, I just want to talk about the last of the equipment types, boots. In all reality, these are not very impactful and not very important to pay attention to, but they do affect your combat. You get 2 guaranteed boots, one at floor 40 of the mines, combat boots giving you a +3 defense, and one on floor 80 of the mines, the Firewalker boots, which gives you +3 defense and +3 immunity. Now, basically, I wouldn't tell you to go after any kind of boots unless you're looking for a certain color, in which case, here's a chart of all the boots and where they can be found. Otherwise, what most people consider to be the best boots in the game are the Cinder Clown shoes, which give you +6 defense, +5 immunity, and they're just straight up bought from the Volcano Dungeon shop on floor 5 for 100 Cinder Shards. Also, on the topic of boots, since they do affect your appearance, if you ever want to replace the look of one boot with another, you can tailor them together. When tailoring them, you'll get the stats of whatever boots are on the bottom and the look of whatever boots are on the top. This will be permanent. If you want to change their look again, you'll have to put another pair of boots in the top. I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that this can be done with weapons at the forge. It'll cost you 10 Cinder Shards, and put the weapon you want the stats of on the left and the one you want the look of on the right. You can only merge weapons of the same type, and this does not apply to slingshots. Now for the level up rewards. First, whenever you level up, you get a flat increase of 5 HP. So if you're struggling with harder monsters or deeper floors, you can't go wrong with getting an extra combat level up or 2. As for crafting recipes, on level 1, you get the Sturdy ring, which we've discussed, and Bug Steak. This is a bit of an emergency food item that can be crafted out of 10 bug meat that'll heal 45 energy and 30 HP. That's a lot of bug meat to sacrifice for just a little bit of healing. At level 2, you get the Life Elixir recipe. This is the single best healing item in the game at the cost of every mushroom other than common. It says it only heals for 90 HP, but that's not true. It heals for 100% of your HP no matter what. At level 3, you get the Roots Platter recipe made out of only a cave carrot and a renter root, both items that can be found in the mines. While it does heal a decent amount, it's mostly known for its attack buff of 3. We haven't really discussed the attack stat, but basically what it does is 1 point of attack is 3 damage points, flat. So this +3 attack will give you +9 damage on every attack. At level 4, you get the Warrior Ring, which we previously discussed. And at level 5, we have our first profession choice between Fighter, which makes all attacks deal 10% more damage, in addition to a 15 HP increase. I mean, you can't go wrong, that's more damage. On the other side, we have Scout, which increases the critical strike chance by 50%. I want to stress that this is not additive. You do not now have a minimum 50% chance to crit. This is multiplicative with your actual crit chance. So say you have a 5% chance to crit, now you have a 7.5% chance to crit. Now, just looking at these, I feel like you can pretty easily go towards Fighter. The damage and HP will help you no matter what, whereas for Scout, it's really only useful if you're specifically using weapons with a high critical hit rate, and even then, you're not getting any HP for it. Moving on to level 6, you get the Slime Egg Press. This is an item that is just about required if you want to have a slime hutch. What it does is it takes 100 slime and turns it into an egg. This egg can randomly be one of 4 colors: green, blue, red, or purple, all in increasing rarity and increasing value. I'll always say it, the slime hutch isn't a bad idea. It's actually pretty good. And then you'll also get the Oil of Garlic. This is a crafting recipe with the steep price of 10 garlic and 1 oil that gives you a food item that can give you the Oil of Garlic buff. This buff lasts for 10 real-world minutes and will prevent any enemies from spawning in the mines. In the Skull Cavern, it prevents floors from being infested and will prevent swarms, which is when the screen gets all hazy and a bunch of flying enemies start coming at you. It also sells for 1,000 gold, which is notably a bit more than the garlic and oil would sell for in most cases, so make of that what you will. At level 7, you get 2 rings, the Ring of Yoba and the Thorns Ring. At level 8, you get the Slime Incubator, the other half required for the Slime Hutch. This is where you take those slime eggs you made previously and hatch them. Interestingly enough, these can be put anywhere. You can hatch slimes wherever you want, even in town and in your house. And you also get explosive ammo, which is so important. So I didn't discuss the slingshot too much in this. That's because I truly believe it to be more of a mining tool than a combat tool. Yes, it can deal damage with different kinds of ammo, but the explosive ammo is really where it's at. It acts like a slightly smaller cherry bomb when it impacts a wall and it explodes immediately, making it incredibly quick for Skull Cavern runs. Level 9, you finally get the beautiful Iridium Band, which we discussed previously, and you get Squid Ink Ravioli, another unique recipe buff. The recipe is pretty specific, needing squid ink, wheat flour, and tomato, and what the Squid Ink Ravioli buff does is it prevents you from getting any debuffs. It's not crazy, but it can be useful in a very specific situation, namely floors 40 to 80 of the Dangerous Mines, which has the worst debuff in the game, nausea, which prevents you from eating any food. What's interesting to note is the Squid Ink Ravioli buff does take the place of your food buff, but the Oil of Garlic buff doesn't, so you can have it alongside food buffs. And finally at level 10, we're getting our second profession. So first, looking on the fighter side, we have Brute, which is dealing an additional 15% more damage, which would be a total of 25% more damage, or Defender, which adds 25 more HP, coming to a total of 40 extra HP from the professions. Honestly, either or. This is completely up to you. I think these are completely balanced, one for a more offensive playstyle, one for a more defensive. Go crazy. Then we have the Scout professions. First we have Acrobat, which cuts the cooldown on special moves in half. Pretty good, especially for clubs, which have a really good special move. This is a popular one. And then we have Desperado, which makes critical strikes do 2 times damage. Again, this is a case where Acrobat works with any weapon, and Desperado only works with weapons that want to do critical hits. It's crazy if you have like the Iridium Needle, but otherwise, I think you'd almost always have to go with Acrobat, or better yet, over onto Fighter for more general use. That should be it. Now you may be saying I didn't go over all of the enemies. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna do that. I kinda already did do it actually with my Skull Cavern and Dangerous Mines guide. So if you want to know like specific strategies against specific enemies, you can go and do that. But for the most part, the enemies in Stardew Valley, you know, they're pretty simple. They walk towards you. Sometimes they throw something at you. That's like it. Anyway, we're finally at the end of all of the skill tutorials. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and good night.